It's quite
You
difficult.
probably can
Lakeisha,
curse
can
on
you
it.
read Thai?
I can read some words. I probably have 4-year-old, 4.5-year-old
You know what's so
understanding
weird?
of what I read.
I picked up reading Japanese, like, I think I learned katakana in a day and hiragana in a day.
Very easy. So little, yeah.
And maybe like the first 3,000 kanji in a week.
Wow.
And
3,000 kanji in a week? Are you serious?
I'm serious.
You're a machine, Tyler.
Because I had this book called
he is a programmer.
The pictograph book. No, not at all. It's because I'm a visual person. And there was a book made for learning the Chinese, Japanese characters visually called Pictograph. And it made little drawings out of the symbols for you. And so you're just, every time you see that symbol, you remember that drawing, and the drawing is related to what it means.
Yeah, you can connect it.
Right,
yeah.
so when you see the symbol for mountain, you'll never forget that means mountain ever again. Like, it's the most obvious thing ever, right? And rain and, like, you know, all of them. And then you start to learn the beautiful part of those languages, Chinese and Japanese visual languages, is the symbol, even because sometimes you put three little characters together to make one character, right? And maybe you don't know exactly what the character means, but it's a combination of, you know, rain and mountain and person resting, and I think I know what it means, even though I don't know exactly what it means. You have a really good idea of what it means because you know what the characters that make up the word, similar to in English, where if you know
guess what it means,
the root of the word, right, in Latin.
Yeah.
So
that makes so much sense. I mean, and I think it has a lot. I mean, I think we should do more of that in education overall, right? You know, instead of making things or allowing things to be or seem a bit obscure, you know, to help people to make the connections that help them to learn. It doesn't have to be a mystery all the time.
No, but Japanese is easy language.
For Tyler, you know what, Tyler? I think your previous life must be a Japanese. You just download it from the universe.
All of my Japanese friends said exactly that.
So, do you think you are a samurai or learning?
No, they all joke that my last life I must have been Japanese, and I'm just remembering everything. And it just, I don't know other way to explain it, because I grew up learning Spanish on the border of Mexico from the age of 2 until 25, and my Spanish is pretty good, but I had to learn it. And then I go over and start learning Japanese, and it was effortless. And my Japanese in, a year was better than 25 years of growing up with Spanish.
That's so crazy because Spanish is Latin, you know? That's, I mean, you're...
And I was surrounded by it.
Absolutely.
I had a Mexican nanny who took care of me from the time I was born until it's bizarre. It's really weird. I mean, I spoke it, but it was still, I recall learning new words all the time. Like, oh, what does this mean? What, but in Japanese, it was like, if I hear a word one time, I remember it.
Well, and just real quick, they always say, research says that language and food are the two biggest connectors to a place. And so if you love Japanese food and you can speak the language, then you really
but here's my point. I'm in Thailand now for many years. Forget it. Totally.
That's why you ordered a double cheeseburger with fries. I still feel bad. I changed my pick from that day to bring a little bit of happiness into your week. Yeah.
Net it was happiness. I enjoyed the whole learning episode. So let's see. Where's my audios? Where's the air horn? Are we ready? I don't have the cash machine. I still need to reload that air effect, but we do have the air horn. Welcome back. Happy Monday, everybody.
Let's do this.
Let's do it. So the biggest story is from the New York Times, and it says, it took decades to bring meaningful government regulation for big tobacco, and experts say it could take an equally long time to regulate big tech. So the New York Times is like a dog with a bone. They are not letting go of the Facebook drama, and they're not going to let this one go until there's some real blood in the water. My goodness, the New York Times. It's not even the New York Times' bag. Like it was the Wall Street Journal with these Facebook files, and the New York Times is writing more stories than the Wall Street Journal, about poking holes at Facebook for the Wall Street Journal's quote unquote Facebook files. What is going on, New York Times? You cannot let this go.
Well, if it bleeds, it leads. You know that, right?
But I love that they're on a mission with Facebook. Holy cow. So the article says lawmakers see path to rein in tech, but it isn't smooth. If what faces big tech is anything like what happened to big tobacco, the road ahead is likely to be years-long battle over proposed rules and regulations. Yes, because the American government itself is even more fucked up than Facebook. And there you go. That's what you needed to know. And that's why, and you might even say the politicians are putting their careers above the people, kind of like you're accusing Facebook of doing, putting yourself above the people you're supposed to be serving, right? And that's the whole hypocrisy hitting you right in the face. And you too, New York Times, you too are causing division, even more than Facebook, who you're trying to sink their ship. So, what do we make of that glaring hypocrisy of these hypocritical activist journalists doing their best to make Facebook pay, take them down, who they see as the source of what is killing them, which to some degree it might be. So the article says Facebook and big tech are facing a big tobacco moment, according to Senator Richard Blumenthal, the Democrat of Connecticut, who was, by the way, and the article should mention, but they don't, was the person who led that hearing with the whistleblower. Democrat of Connecticut said this week that when the whistleblower testified about how the social media company's products harm teenagers, I think that's an appropriate analogy, said Senator Cynthia Loomis, Republican of Wyoming, added later. The whistleblower's testimony and the thousands of internal documents she shared with lawmakers generated unusual bipartisan bonhomie. You're throwing in obscure French words now in the middle of a New York Times article? Okay, lovely. So in a divided Washington, senators said it was time for Congress to coalesce around new regulations to rein in the company and perhaps the technology industry as a whole. But if what faces big tobacco is anything like what happened to big tobacco, a reckoning over the industry's harms to society and children in particular, what lies ahead is likely to be a years-long complicated path towards new rules and regulations with no guaranteed result. Yes, exactly. You know why? Because Facebook's got money and you greedy bastards are going to take it. And your whole lobbying machine is set up to defeat yourself. And that's why this is going to be a whole big political dog and pony show for nothing.
There's really not as much analogy as they're making out, and I'll tell you why. Because tobacco is a fairly simple business, okay? And tech is a much more complicated business. You have to actually go figure out what different businesses they're in. You've got antitrust issues with tech that you didn't have with big tobacco. It really is completely different. I think it's much more complicated than big tobacco. But so I think it's a very, very different situation. And one of the threats though to big tech that wasn't a threat to big tobacco is if they bring an antitrust action through the FTC or through the DOJ. There was no antitrust, risk to big tobacco. It was just a question of basically damages. It was kind of closer to the suit over the opioids than anything to do
Good point. Yeah, David Sachs, who's a rather renowned investor and former operator, entrepreneur, very successful, part of the PayPal mafia. He and my buddy Jason and Chamath do the All In podcast, as you probably know. If you don't, you should follow that. That's a fantastic podcast. one of the top tech podcasts. Some weeks it's number one even. And they do a show every Friday, basically. And in the most recent one, they talked about this whole Facebook whistleblower Senate subcommittee hearing. And David Sachs, who's part of the PayPal mafia, is incredibly close to Peter Thiel, who's incredibly close to Mark Zuckerberg, came out with a hot take that he said that this is an intentionally coordinated shakedown between the whistleblower, some Democrats, and the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, and that they pre-cooked up this whole thing in advance. Because of the speed with how fast that Senate hearing was thrown together and everything else, he believes that this was all a coordinated effort to take down who the press see as their main enemy, and a bunch of point scoring in politics and the whole political kabuki theater that we're now going to see. And there's another hearing January 6th, and yeah, there might be something to that. But what's interesting, I mean, David thinks for himself, always has, always will. I mean, but given his proximity to Peter Thiel and Zuckerberg, that might be coming. That might be a little potentially a little telephone game from inside Facebook itself. So,
just saying.
Just saying. Hashtag don't sue me. Hashtag just saying. Next one up is from Nick Clegg of Facebook, who is kind of like their official spokesperson in some sense. And it says, Nick Clegg says that Facebook will put more friends, less politics in the newsfeed and will nudge teens away from toxic Instagram content. Great. Fantastic. Problem solved. Fighting back after the whistleblower's damning testimony earlier this week before a congressional subcommittee, Facebook spokesperson Nick Clegg said on NBC's Sunday Meet the Press that changes are coming to the social media outlet and to its cousin Instagram. Clegg, the former UK Deputy Prime Minister, who's now Vice President for Global Affairs and Communication at Facebook, said the company will reduce the presence of politics on people's feeds after it lifted security measures implemented for the 2020 election. He claimed the move stems from user feedback seeking more friends, less politics. Facebook's chief spokesman said the social media giant is going to institute new guards for younger Instagram users in the face of criticism from the whistleblower's charges that the company puts profits ahead of users' well-being. Later in the interview on CNN, Clegg said Instagram will also undergo some changes designed to better address youngsters amid claims that the service is damaging their mental health. Here's the quote, "But we understand the concerns of some that we need to press pause, listen to experts, explain our intentions, and so on," he said. "We're going to introduce new controls for adults and teens on an optional basis, obviously, so adults can supervise what their teens are doing online," he added. "Secondly, we're doing something which I think will make a considerable difference, which is where the teen is looking at the same content over and over again, and it's content which might not be conducive so to their well-being." You have a typo there. You put "so their well-being." You meant conducive to their well-being. "We'll nudge them to look at other content." Oh, like cigarettes do. Like when they say, "Hey, bonehead, this is bad for you. And we need to put the responsibility on you, the idiot, for doing this harmful thing to yourself, so that you're so stupid that you're doing this harmful thing to yourself that you're going to come back and blame us. That's how stupid you are. And we got to make sure that you take responsibility for your own stupidity." Okay, so that's what are we clear, stupid person? So that's what we're going to do now. So that you don't go and run to a judge or to a journalist and say, "They made me watch this content that was bad for me." No. You decided to look at that. By the way, my Instagram, my Facebook, whatever, is like dog videos, a bunch of like Labradors licking each other. That's my experience of Instagram and Facebook. I don't know what you all are watching, but they're showing you the stuff that you spend time watching. That's how YouTube as well. So on YouTube, it's a lot more like how to live sustainably type stuff is what I end up getting recommended. But anyway, so they're going to nudge them to look at other content if they're looking at harmful content. I would encourage you, Facebook, to also put up a little warning to say, not only just nudge them away from the harmful content, put a little thing to let them know, hey, dumbass, that's harmful content that you keep binging on. You're gorge eating at the buffet of fast food. Emotional, heroin, if you want to use the CCP's words, but you're binge eating crap, and it's going to have consequences. And
the weirdest thing is that this is all comped by the casino host known as the advertisers. So you kind of get, someone's going to give you a free lunch, you're going to take it, and it's going to be shit.
Okay. One of the things that we heard from users both from the US and around the world since the election is people want to see more friends, less politics, Clegg said. So we have been testing ways in which we can reduce the presence of politics for people's Facebook experiences. Okay. It's simply not true to say we lifted those measures immediately. In fact, meaning after the election, we kept the vast majority right through to the inauguration, and we kept some in place permanently, so we permanently don't recommend civic and political groups to people. But it's worth remembering that those measures are like closing all the highways in a town because a temporary one-off problem in one neighborhood. You don't do that on a permanent basis. Interesting metaphor. Well, that's interesting because if they do that, then they're basically saying, you're accusing us of XYZ. You say we're bad. We're not going to change. Well, fuck you. We just changed. We just fixed it. Now what? Good. I hope they do. I hope it'd be interesting to see if they make these changes and then neutralize the kind of vitriol or the kind of accusations and from their critics. Yeah, I hope they do. Of course, the downside is that will not stop that will only work to, if you know Americans, that will only work to embolden their critics to continue on a endless laundry list of other changes that they would like them to make, unfortunately.
By the way, Tyler, Facebook is so big internationally now, and international is so important to them. They could actually scale down the U.S. business dramatically.
Great point.
And leave like a stub just so the
Great point.
overseas.
Great point.
Still be a pretty business,
because all of this brouhaha is somewhat unique to the U.S. The rest of the world, Europe specifically, is like, yeah, we're adults. We understand doing bad shit to us is on us. We're not going to fucking sue Facebook for us binge eating fast food at the buffet. And by the way, Americans, when you go travel to Europe, that's one of the first things you're going to learn is how stupid Europeans think Americans are, that you can't be responsible for your own decision making. But in
fairness, look what the Australians did. They just blamed the newspapers rather than blaming Facebook. So CNN and other public, they all pulled out of Australia, because of the whole situation. So Facebook didn't get the blame there, but so they just picked on a different target. So I wouldn't just say every country's better. It's like the Australians just picked a different target than Facebook.
I've traveled pretty broadly, and it's pretty consistent that America's quite unique in Americans want to demand that everyone else be held responsible for their own poor decision making. In Thailand, we put our kids on top of our cars while we drive on the road. But when the kid flies off, we know that's on us. We're not suing the car manufacturer.
No, but I'm just saying the Europeans have tighter privacy laws than we do.
Yes.
There's a lot there.
But think about that
also,
again.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh no, ladies first.
All right, thank you. No, I totally see eye to eye with you, Tyler, on this thing about Americans feeling like we need, special protection from our own bad choices. But let's not forget that Facebook has also been linked to some much larger, even one arguably more serious
I
issues,
agree.
such as the
I agree.
genocide in Myanmar.
I agree.
Yeah, so I mean,
I
it's
agree.
yeah,
Yes, there
there's
are
U.S. is
legit.
not alone.
Yeah, I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you, but there are legitimate things to be to bring that Facebook can can make improvements on, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But them enabling your own poor choices, that this is going to be more of a predominantly an American debate, because the rest of the world's like, what are you talking about? You asked for videos of people whipping themselves, and now you're complaining that you're whipping yourself, like as
True,
if.
but it's
I
also a
think
little different when we talk about kids, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
that's got to be a little bit of a different
Yep.
situation too.
Well, yeah, but we are in. By the way, we are officially in a digital world now. There was a transition from the non-digital world into the digital world. We are fully in the digital world. If previously parents are responsible for their kids, not the objects with which the kids can entertain themselves or the toys that they buy at the store. The if you're buying your kids guns at the toy shop and whatever else, that's on you as the parent. And whatever your kids are doing, now that we're in a digital world, whatever your kids are doing digitally, that's on you as a parent. You can no longer be like, well, I had no idea this was going on this digital device. You know goddamn well what's going on in the digital world. So I don't think what we could have for the past 5, maybe 10 years played like we didn't know what was available on the internet. No, you know what's on the internet. Everything's on the internet. And if you're letting your kids sit with a tablet for 5 hours a day, instead of going outside and playing, that's on the parent. And the parent needs to, at this point in 2021, be responsible for what their kids are. They're consuming. The phone is an extension of reality at this point.
Tyler, I agree with you 1,000,000%. But the problem is the general setup is this. Don't ever tell me I'm a bad parent, because that's the you can never cross, right? And so a lot of this stuff, it comes off as you criticize, not you, but I'm saying the perception.
I get you.
You know what I mean? I'm the type that I am stricter with my kids. I do tell them what to do. I do try to be their adult.
Yep.
But in this world, you have kids that are running around doing stuff, and you say, hey, look, you should really watch your kids. And oh my God,
you just pushed the nuclear button on the American. Chris is right. For the non-Americans in the room, that is the nuclear button. That's what's going to turn that playground kind of confrontation into a physical altercation very quickly. If you insinuate that the parent is the person's a bad parent, holy shit.
I also wanted to add,
that's the struggle. That's the struggle Facebook has.
Yeah.
We let our kids on there. We're not like watching them the entire time, and so unfortunately, kids are going to do what kids do, right? And then when it becomes and believe me, I'm not sticking up for Facebook. I'm just describing this kind of catch-22, right? Like, we're trying to make things better for the kids by saying, hey, parents, you should be paying more attention. And the second you say that, you're insinuating they're not good parents. And, you go nuclear on Facebook.
I think Maria was trying to jump in.
Okay. Maria?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, from this, comparing the perspectives, that it seems very interesting, I think, from, like, sitting in Europe, looking at how, like, big of a like that the whole thing is news, really, for Americans, that they just became aware of how their business model works, and honestly, like, if you think also about, like, the this whole, like, how the news is being steered, it really is bottom up, in I at least what I'm seeing in Europe, sorry, in America, where, yes, of course, now FTC is trying to get into it, and there are regulatory changes, but really in Europe it seems like it's very top down, where the regulator comes in and is introducing or imposing some changes or lawsuits or stuff, and then the end user really is just like, well, like, getting on with their actual life, instead of having spending time talking about Facebook, which everyone knows what it's for. So it's a very different mindset, and I really am still surprised to this day that Americans have so much time to spend on debating this instead of really getting on with doing something useful.
Okay. So the next one is leaked marketing site for the Pixel 6 phones will include a 50 megapixel primary camera with a 12 megapixel ultra wide and a 48 megapixel 4x telephoto lens on the Pixel Pro and a magic eraser feature. What is that? Is that they're now stealing one of the really popular features that people pay for these, little photo editing apps so you can erase images out of the photos? Are they baking that into the native camera app now? That would be genius. And it would kill all of those photo retouching apps overnight, which they easily could do. And Google could build an incredibly good eraser. Oh, it looks like it is that. Well, I guess if you're one of those apps that was selling the remove the crazy item in your beautiful photo apps, you can now go find a new startup to do or sell now. Here's your warning. Call your banker, let them know you're for sale right now. Fireside sale before October 20th, what is it, the 16th? You've got about 4 days to sell your company.
It's worth noting that Google has a lot of that functionality on their cloud services. So when you upload to Google Photos, there's a lot of photo editing and retouching and everything else you can do there. So it's quite interesting that they're now bringing it down to the device level.
Yeah, and Google's likely to be able to do that better with their machine learning teams than any other startup. So sell right now. Don't hesitate. Do not pass go. Do not just run. Pick up the phone, call the banker, say, I need to sell this company before Thursday. Any offer is fine. Thank you. Yes, we take Bitcoin. So, and when is that event exactly? I believe it's the 16th. So it's coming up quick. So we will watch that Google Pixel 6 live stream event because a lot of Google's approach to their iPhone competitor is the hardware is decent, but where they really excel is on the software and especially on the cloud AI side of things where they just fucking run laps all around Apple, honestly, with like the language stuff and all of the meaning, and their Google Assistant just makes Siri look rather rudimentary. So, and they're speeding ahead, and they now have their own system on a chip specifically for the first time ever for that AI-like abilities. So this could be a really interesting event, live stream that we tuned into to see how that processor on the chip for all of their AI that are so heavily invested in, and what that'll turn into. So the next one from CNBC, a profile piece now of Ifeoma Ozoma, who was in the news twice last week. First, she was in the news before the workbook she made for whistleblowers. Why was she in the news the first point? I forget. Anyway, she was in the news for the second time last week because she released a guidebook for people to be whistleblowers. And that's a really interesting concept because now we're setting up the off-ramps for all of these big tech employees to become activists. Oh, I remember. I got it wrong. She was in the news first for coming out with this workbook for how to be a whistleblower. Then she was in the news the next day with Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, for signing a new act called I forget what it was called, the Silence No More Act, and making it so that employers could no longer use the NDAs that employees sign as a way to stop them from whistleblowing about Well, currently, they fixed it during the Me Too movement so that if you were a victim of sexual harassment, that you could share that even if you've signed an NDA. And then Miss Azoma said, wait a minute, what about the other forms of harassment, like racial harassment and, on and on, all the other types of harassment? Great point, honestly. Yeah, any kind of like serious wrongdoings at a company, you shouldn't be bound and gagged to not say that by a contract, because that shit's just it's kind of a human rights type of scenario. So they passed that in California, and now CNBC, which is America's biggest financial news outlet, is doing a profile piece, we call it in the biz, on Miss Azoma. And yeah, kind of perhaps well deserved, because as I said, that's some big moves in 1 week to make a workbook for whistleblowers and to work with Gavin Newsom on passing this new act. Wow, that's some effective change that is going to lead to, make no mistakes, a whole lot of whistleblowing going to be happening here very soon, because previously people were not able to, on both of those reasons. One, they weren't really protected due to they was kind of bound and gagged by their NDAs from being able to do it. That's gone. B, there wasn't really a good resource, workbook, hand guide to doing it most effectively and carefully, optimally, and a team to go consult with on how to maximizing, your whistleblowing. So watch out, big tech. There's now an official huge hole in the boat, and the people are going to be able to get out.
Tyler, there's a flip side to this NDA issue that hasn't been as much discussed. It wasn't one of the articles.
Okay.
Which is that now in this situation, what you'll have is the stuff will get litigated out much longer. The people being accused are more likely now to bring countersuits. So the whole thing will have to go through the courts. You won't get settlements. And then to the extent that someone was damaged and they want to get some sort of monetary damages and move on with their lives, that won't be coming anytime soon. Everything's going to be delayed by years, okay? Because everything's going to be litigated out forever at this point without the NDAs. The NDAs were kind of like a way of getting settlements and getting money out to people who were victimized and whatever. And now everything's going to be litigated out forever. And the only people who are going to get rich on this are trial lawyers. This is a trial lawyer field day. That's my own view, but.
So it's in this profile piece, the headline says, tech whistleblowers are having a moment, and one woman who's been there has found a new way to help. Also this week, the bill she helped write that limits non-disclosure agreements was signed into law in California. Azoma told CNBC that she's using skills she learned at various tech companies to equip employees facing misconduct. Here's the article. Whistleblowers are getting louder in Silicon Valley. Most notable is ex-Facebook employee Frances Haugen, who testified in front of Congress this week after revealing documents that showed the company is aware of the harm its products cause. Also this week, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed the Silence No More Act, which prohibits employers from using non-disclosure to muzzle complaints about discrimination. The timing was fortuitous for Miss Azoma, a former Pinterest employee who's recently been spending much of her energy trying to create a safe space for tech whistleblowers. In 2020, Azoma and other Black ex-Pinterest employee went public with claims of discrimination and retaliation during their time at the social media company. On Wednesday, Azoma launched a free online resource guide for tech workers who are considering making workplace complaints. It's called the Tech Worker Handbook. And Azoma said it's meant to help those who need basic information with how to share their stories of misconduct and how to prepare for what comes next. Here's the quote. It's really depressing stuff when you get into it, Azoma, 29, said in an interview. When you look at all the expenses you need to be planning for, when you decide you're going to potentially leave a company, it is such a huge decision to make for yourself and your family. I think we're doing individuals a disservice if we're not providing any kind of support or resources. It's basically saying throw yourself into the lion's den and good luck. Azoma's guide reached over 30,000 website views in its first day and received praise from many across the industry. Azoma owns the domain and is overseeing the site. She's tapped dozens of tech workers and organizations to help contribute to the guide. She told CNBC that since launching the guide, she's received hundreds of inquiries from workers asking how to get involved and whether they should speak out about their company. Ellen Pao, a tech investor and former Reddit CEO who sued venture firm Kleiner Perkins for gender discrimination in 2012, praised Ozoma's work by saying, "I think it's incredibly important to set people's expectations." Pao said, "Your company is going to come after you like we saw with the PR smear against Francis," she says, referring to Facebook's efforts to discredit Haugen during and after her testimony. Yep, this is going to be an interesting moment going forward here. And the journal, in addition to the trial lawyers, the journalists are also going to have a whole lot of bleeding headlines to be running with. And boy, are their phone lines open. Dear whistleblowers, can you please call me? Yeah, there's going to be a whole bunch of journalists competing to publish the juicy details from those whistleblowers. So the next one up. Oh, and our friend Ashley Gjovic has tweeted about this profile from CNBC, saying, 30 days ago, I was an Apple employee. I was sitting at home suspended because I had raised concerns about my office being on a triple Superfund toxic waste dump without safety testing for over 6 years, then raised concerns about Apple retaliating, intimidating, and abusing their employees. Yes, Ashley, it's all about you again, Ashley. During she felt the need to let everyone know. I'm
not laughing at her, but gosh, she's like really hardcore, like scorched earth, man.
Well, I love that it's about the profile piece, and she felt the need to make a big tweet thread to remind everybody that she was leading.
I'm still here, guys.
She's still leading the charge against Apple over there. The next one's from The Atlantic. When trying to address problems that social media may cause for younger people, lawmakers focus on Facebook and largely ignore TikTok, which most teens use. Oh, The Atlantic. Oh, look at you with your actual journalism over there. As I've said many times before, The Atlantic is actually one of the few publications that's actually got some real good stuff going on. Yeah. And they write very thought-provoking, long pieces, very well researched. And look at them. Oh, wow. Kind of saying exactly what I said all last week during all of this Facebook whistleblowing stuff of how much heat Facebook is getting. And yet TikTok is, destroying schools as we speak with their own internally promoted challenges. Oh, and people were dying from the Benadryl challenge by overdosing on Benadryl. Oh, several people have died due to TikTok challenges, which I believe the dots will be connected that these challenges are actually intentionally curated by TikTok itself.
And let's not forget about the COVID misinformation.
So The Atlantic's headline, when trying to address problems that social media may cause for young people, it makes them claim that they think Instagram causes them to feel that maybe they have negative self-images, body images about themselves. And over in TikTok land, people are dying. Actually dying. And we're concerned about the 30% of the young ladies who think that Instagram's the source of their negative self-body image based on the images that they like and, continue to look at. And Instagram's the problem. And we're not worried about TikTok, where people are actually dying. And so The Atlantic, I've made that case multiple times in this room last week. And here's The Atlantic with their headline. Lawmakers focus on Facebook and largely ignore TikTok, which by the way, the kids are on TikTok. They're not on Facebook. Did that part slip past you? The kids aren't on Facebook, and they're to most degree, they're disproportionately on TikTok more than anywhere else. But you're worried about what they're doing on Instagram?
Well, there's that, right? And the whole outage really, I think, concerned our generation and older generations because everybody else was on TikTok and Snap and didn't really care much about the outage. Maybe a bit for Instagram, but not so much.
So here's the headline. It says 1 billion TikTok users understand what Congress doesn't. The video sharing app avoids scrutiny because politicians don't take it seriously. It's a great point. They don't know what it is. They've never heard of it.
Well, if they do take it seriously, then they'd have to admit that Trump was right last year.
Oh, great point. This is such a good point.
Tyler, TikTok is banned in India.
Yes.
They banned it last year.
Yeah, well, it's practically banned in China. They only let them do 40 minutes a day. And it's a Chinese company. Many people...
Are they in the U.S. Or are they banned by Trump?
No, Trump tried to force them to be acquired by a U.S. owner. And it looked like Oracle was making moves to acquire it. But that was in the later stages of Trump's presidency. And the clock ran out. And he didn't win the re-election.
So what's the status now?
So now there's a new president who isn't Trump, who isn't forcing them to do that.
I think the U.S. military, though, if you're in the military, they don't let you have TikTok on your phones. If I recall, I think that was put in by the military. They're concerned about, espionage from, So if you're, yeah.
Many people think TikTok as a dance app. And although it is an app full of dancing, it's also a juggernaut experiencing astronomical growth. In July, TikTok, a short-form video sharing app powered by an uncanny good recommendation algorithm and owned by the Chinese company ByteDance, became the only social media app other than those from Facebook to ever pass 3 billion downloads. And at the end of last month, TikTok announced it had more than 1 billion monthly users. It was, by some counts, the most downloaded app in 2020 and remained so in 2021. Not bad for an app launched only in 2016. Of the social media platforms around today, TikTok is the likeliest to represent the future. Its user base is mostly young people, and if you look for TikTok in the news coverage, you're more likely to find it in the lifestyle, culture, or even food section than you are on the front page. It's not that social media platforms aren't newsworthy. Facebook consistently dominates headlines, but TikTok is all too often regarded as an unserious thing to write and read about. That's a mistake, and it's one that Congress is making as well. Recent Senate hearings convened under the banner of protecting kids online focused on a whistleblower's revelations regarding what Facebook itself knows about how its products harm teen users' mental health. That's an important question to ask, but if there's going to be a reckoning around social media's role in society, and in particular in its effects on teens, shouldn't lawmakers also talk about the platform teens actually use?
And by the way, I think it's notable that TikTok hit like 1 billion users 5 years faster than Instagram did or something like that. I mean, so it's growing much faster than Instagram or Facebook grew at, similar maturity levels.
The Wall Street Journal's Facebook Files reports, after all, also showed that Facebook itself is petrified of young people abandoning its platforms. To those users, Facebook just isn't cool. So TikTok is not a passing fad or a tiny startup in the social media space. It's a cultural powerhouse creating superstars out of unknown artists overnight. It's a career plan for young influencers and a portable shopping mall full of products and brands. It's where many young people get their new ideas, discuss politics, and sometimes they get rowdy. In June 2020, TikTok teens allegedly pranked then President Donald Trump's re-election campaign by overbooking tickets to a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then never showing. The humiliation seemed to be one reason Trump threatened to ban the app in August 2020, 2 months later. This briefly put TikTok in the spotlight. For a few months, serious debate raged about whether the app was a national security threat. Its ties to China sparked fears that it might be forced to share data with the Chinese government or that the CCP could influence its content moderation practices. What unfolded was a saga made for prime time, involving twists and turns, distraught teens, threats of retaliation from China, the departure of the company's chief executive, and bizarrely, the floating of Microsoft and Walmart as possible buyers for the app. But then the whole thing just petered out. As a Verge headline quipped in November, TikTok says the Trump administration has forgotten about trying to ban it. would like to know what's up. When Trump forgot about TikTok, so it seems did the rest of us, as lawmakers appear to be prepared to haul Facebook's CEO Mark Zuckerberg back before them yet again. TikTok CEO has never appeared. Can you even name him? Oh, Atlantic. But TikTok is still the same app it was last year when people were worked up about the threat it posed to national security, only bigger. And regardless of the extent of the Chinese government's influence over it, TikTok is a mega platform full of user-generated content. Wherever users post anything that gets millions of views, how the platform decides what it will and won't allow is worth asking questions about. In September, the Wall Street Journal reported that TikTok also pushes minors towards posts encouraging eating disorders. Oh, TikTok is proactively pushing teens towards content about eating disorders. Right. And did we find that in Instagram? And other harmful content. Last year, many users were shown graphic suicide videos that went viral. Researchers find misinformation and conspiracy theories on TikTok just as they do everywhere else on the internet. TikTok says it takes down plenty of those posts, but how it decides which ones is unclear. The guidelines define misinformation as quote-unquote content that is inaccurate or false. That platform's content moderation is opaque, but there are plenty of reasons to be concerned. It has suppressed posts of users deemed ugly, poor, or disabled. That was revealed also, that they intentionally don't profile ugly people, or disabled people, or poor-looking people. Removed videos on topics that are politically sensitive in China, and automatically added beauty filters to users' videos. And their challenges, which prompted kids to remove soap dispensers in school, might sound comical, but school administrators aren't laughing. Connecticut Attorney General wants to know what's going on with the Slap a Teacher challenge, although TikTok says that's not its fault. The Facebook hearing suggests the potential dangers to children have created a level of bipartisan focus from lawmakers that has been missing until now, but by putting all their focus on one company, lawmakers have shown that how Facebook works isn't the only thing Congress doesn't understand about the online ecosystem. Or maybe my friend David Sachs is right. Maybe this is a witch hunt specifically about Facebook, because if they actually cared about what's going on with the kids' mental health, they would be focusing on TikTok, but they're not at all. It's never been mentioned.
Well, Tyler, one thing to remember is because, Facebook skews older, every member of Congress has a Facebook account and a Twitter account, and probably most of them don't have a TikTok account. Some of their kids might, but even then, most of the members of Congress are too old to even have, children that young. They'd have to ask their great-grandchildren or something, that's
Your mic disappeared, Ken.
Am they still there?
We can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me now?
Barely.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had good connection here. So no, I just
there you
basically
go.
said. Yeah, I just basically said that the every congressman has a Facebook account and a Twitter account, and they don't have TikTok accounts, and most of their kids are already grown at their age. So they'd have to go to their great grandchildren to ask about TikTok.
Okay, so it says how TikTok manages to skirt the limelight is as mysterious as its algorithm. Maybe Facebook has a corporate culture and organizational structure that make it uniquely worrisome. Perhaps politicians forget about TikTok because they don't use it much themselves. TikTok may get less attention precisely because its content moderation is less transparent. It's hard to write and complain about decisions you're unaware of. TikTok's success in branding itself as unserious is it just wants to bring joy rather than connect people. Perhaps deflect serious criticism, but none of these is a great reason for ignoring such a widely popular and rapidly growing app when thinking about the effects of social media and how to regulate it. TikTok is not the only platform that tries to avoid scrutiny by quietly backing into a hedge while Facebook takes the heat. YouTube is the undisputed master of this strategy, but TikTok has the dubious privilege of being one of the few platforms that, according to polls, people dislike and distrust even more than Facebook. Oh, shit.
Curiosity question is, can you short TikTok or ByteDance yet?
You could on the Chinese markets. Maybe.
No, so that's what I'm saying. Like, Maybe
But they've been,
there's some
yeah, but
on Facebook coming down the pike.
maybe reports of Facebook's imminent death are greatly exaggerated, but reports of TikTok's rise certainly aren't. If lawmakers want to address the problem that social media platforms cause for young people, they should care about the platforms young people care about. Evelyn Duick, congratulations for writing a thoughtful piece, as The Atlantic is known to do. A doctoral student at the Harvard Law School and a senior research fellow at the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University. Yep, smart people writing smart articles on The Atlantic, as they do. So back to the kind of shit for brains tech people at the run-of-the-mill tech publications trying to sabotage Facebook again. Next up, let's see. There's a few tweets here. New York Times. Yeah, the New York. Did I tell you the New York Times is on a rampage to take down Facebook? Here's the next piece. New York Times. For teen girls, Instagram is a cesspool. Written over the weekend. This is perhaps the 10th article the New York Times has written about Facebook or Instagram and how bad it is since the Senate hearing. They've now written more articles than the Wall Street Journal, adding more fuel to this dumpster fire. Never once mentioning TikTok in any of their articles. Interesting. They're certainly so concerned about what's happening with the young ladies on social media. As that headline says. That's the New York Times headline. The New York Times headline. Let's read it again. Let's ponder this. For teen girls, Instagram's a cesspool. Right. Sure. And do you mention TikTok at all in this article? Not once. I just searched the whole article. Not one mention of TikTok. What a surprise. I'm shocked. And let me guess, is this another PhD from Harvard writing this article? Lindsay Krause is a writer and producer. She produced the video series Equal Pay, which brought widespread reform to women's sports. Well, kudos, Lindsay. Next up.
So the only article when I search for TikTok is an Al Jazeera article saying a U.S. senator calls for review of TikTok's merger with Musical.ly. Tumbleweeds otherwise.
Go ask any high school teacher or principal which app they're more worried about. Okay. Next up is from Bloomberg, a look at a startup called Pix, P-I-X, a mobile payments system launched 11 months ago by Brazil's central bank and used at least once by half of the Brazilian population. And so they're paying by QR codes, just like Thailand is. Here it comes. The whole world's going digital. Well, a lot of the world anyway. And paying with QR codes. And it came incredibly fast in Southeast Asia, and now it's going to go really fast in Brazil as well. The next one.
Tyler.
Yes.
Real quick, I had an interesting conversation with a friend last night who is Australian, but just relocated to Thailand from Myanmar and from the banking industry. So Myanmar is actually quite advanced with the digital banking system as well. But it's been very interesting because, as you might imagine, the Chinese apps have been trying to make inroads into the Myanmar system, but given kind of the political landscape of what's happening in the country now. And, it's nearly impossible for people to get assets outside of the country or out of the country. It's just going to be really interesting to watch. So I'm going to kind of keep one eye on the headlines coming out of Myanmar as it relates to the digital payments, because it's created lots of opportunity for the unbanked, but because of, the situation and how it's playing out within that country right now, certainly for the local Myanmar people, and then for expats that, have left or are leaving, there's just a lot of movement right now.
That's such a sticky issue because of the the people of Myanmar believe, and they have Clubhouse rooms here that you can, if you follow me here in Clubhouse, you'll know I pop into those rooms and hang out with Ai and her friends. And they believe that the China is what's driving the coup that they're now suffering under. So the idea of Chinese apps coming into Myanmar, like finance apps, Chinese fintech apps, that's gonna be an interesting one.
And it's not a far stretch because, when I was in Myanmar in 2011, 2012, as, the country was opening, China was its only legitimate trading partner. And I have a number of friends and colleagues from within the country who told me that that was the pressure that it took for Myanmar to say, you know what, we need to make some changes so that we can open up to the rest of the world. And there's been a lot of activity over the past 7, 8, 9 years within that country, and it is a bit curious, just given the timing, the level of development, and the greater independence I would say that Myanmar's had over the past 9 or 10 years since the movement away from China. I'm not at all surprised by that claim.
Okay.
And Tyler?
Yes.
Tyler, can I add a quick information about the TikTok and Douyin and the Chinese version of TikTok? Because they are actually two different apps, although they are under the ByteDance, but still their database are totally different. So that means like the malicious link or those hashtags in TikTok, they are never shown in Douyin. And from my own opinions, because
they're separate algorithms.
Control both apps. Yes. So you can see now in China they can regulate the children under 14. They can only use like 14 minutes a day, and they can filter out all those content they don't want the children to see. So they have the technology, but in TikTok they don't actively use this. So I think there's some conspiracy behind that.
Like I've said, it's a great point. And I've said, if you're a tech journalist and you really want to do an interesting piece, get a friend in China, have them make a video recording of their phone, make a brand new account on their version of TikTok called Douyin, and do the exact same setup for the same age, name, person in the regular version of TikTok, and let's see the difference in the content. Because they will be, as BB's pointing out, they're different apps with different algorithms, and those algorithms are optimized for different things. And let's see how different the Chinese version of the app is. So the next one is from The Verge. It says that Tesla delays their full self-driving beta rollout to 1,000 drivers with perfect safety scores of 100. Elon Musk says due to a few last-minute concerns. Okay, and then he says in his tweet, a few last-minute concerns about this build. Release likely on Sunday or Monday. Sorry for the delay. The next one is a thread that Google's staff engineering lead for Apple's platforms says Google stopped using material design for iOS apps after almost a decade in favor of UIKit. That doesn't mean much unless you're a dev, actually. The next one's from Bloomberg. It says MindMaze, which makes VR software to help patients regain motion after strokes or traumatic brain injuries, raises $125 million at a $1.5 billion valuation. VR software to help patients regain motion. That's very cool. Next up from CNBC, Apple appeals the massive Epic Games ruling, in which the judge said that Apple will have to allow for other in-app payment options for app developers to collect payments from their users. And now the headline is Apple's going to appeal that ruling. Of course they are, because that means billions of dollars to Apple that they would lose. So of course they're going to appeal that. And they're asking for a stay on the requirement to make App Store changes, meaning in the meantime, don't change anything. Let's keep it just like it is all those truckloads of money dumping into our HQ every day. Let's keep those trucks rolling, shall we? While we file this appeal. Is that cool with everybody? That we just keep all of that massive dumps of money, those huge trucks, all those armed guards just sending endless piles of cash through our back door. We have to use the big freight elevator because that's how much money is coming in every 20 minutes. But let's just make sure that that's not impeded while we have this appeal. Okay, is that cool with everybody? Thank you. And let's stretch this out as long as we can. And now you're going to watch high-paid lawyers do the longest elongation, the biggest draw out, the biggest stretch they can possibly do. The question is, how many months can they draw that out for? Because every month is worth a lot of money. Knowing that they will likely lose. Now that many courts around the world are also doing this in short order. South Korea didn't even go to court. It's just the government itself said, "Hear ye, we've just passed a new law. It's fixed. It's done. There's no court case needed. Thank you." And then Russia's now doing it. And now India's going to do it. Everyone's going to do it. While the U.S. does what the U.S. does, and they just drag it through the courts for as many months as they can. So they're appealing it. If Apple wins, which I don't think they will, in-app purchase changes could be delayed for years. Oh, if they win in asking for the stay on the requirement, then right, the in-app changes could be delayed for years because the lawyers are going to draw it out for years. Yeah, exactly right, according to CNBC. Apple's asking for a stay on the injunction that says developers can add in-app links to non-app payments. And Tim Sweeney from Epic Games took to Twitter to say Apple filed a appeal. P-E-E-L. Got a sense of humor, this guy. And don't bet on in-app payment crypto. Okay, next one up is from the New York Times. Imposition of Bitcoin on El Salvador's unwilling population by the increasingly authoritarian ruler is testing Bitcoin's promise of financial liberty. So the New York Times claiming that, well, the government of El Salvador did say that Bitcoin is now a new legal currency. Everyone has to accept it. And that's the whole point. It's a legal currency. You can legally use it. And you don't have the option of not accepting it. If you don't want to keep your money in Bitcoin, that's fine. You can transfer it back into the non-Bitcoin currency. No problem. We made that possible for you too. But you have to have the ability you have to have a digital wallet. By the way, we're going to pay you to set up your digital wallet so that people can come to you. You're selling bananas. And that there won't be any questions. Everyone knows they can use Bitcoin anywhere, and they walk up to you and they pay Bitcoin for your bananas, and then you don't want to hold Bitcoin, that's fine. Transfer them out of Bitcoin into the other currency. No problem. That's what's going on. New York Times headline says, Bitcoin preaches financial liberty. A strong man is testing that promise as cryptocurrency enters global finance. An experiment in El Salvador could offer clues on whether it will bring a more libertarian economy or greater government control. El Salvador's Bitcoin's proponents dreams of a financial system largely free of government meddling, but the first time that cryptocurrency became a national currency, it was imposed on an unwilling population by an increasingly authoritarian ruler using a secretive state-run system. New York Times, you're sounding worse than Fox News these days. What are you doing?
I think an interesting point about this El Salvador agreement to standardize on Bitcoin is that merchants don't have to keep their payments in Bitcoin. They can instantly convert it to USD.
I just said that twice.
Oh, sorry.
The surprise. It's okay. The surprising announcement last month that this is my point. And I bet the New York Times doesn't even mention that because they have an agenda. Because they are now agenda journalizing. They're now problematizing. They're not doing journalism anymore. And I really lament this fact because they're tarnishing.
They've turned into a tabloid.
They're tarnishing decades of incredible journalism that put them at the pinnacle of journalism globally, and they're pissing it away to become a tabloid. It's truly regrettable. The surprising announcement last month that El Salvador had adopted Bitcoin, the world's largest cryptocurrency, as legal tender, caught its population by surprise and made the poor, conservative Central American nation an unlikely bellwether of a global technological transformation. The outcome of the uncharted experiment could help determine whether cryptocurrency delivers the freedom from regulation that its proponents envision. No, it's going to be highly regulated. Bitcoin can be regulated or it can be unregulated. Just like cash. There's really not much difference in that regard. Some countries highly regulate it. Some don't. Some countries really track the flow of cash. Some don't. Some are going to really track Bitcoin and highly regulate it. Some won't. So New York Times, please research about Bitcoin before you assign somebody to start writing about it.
I mean, just a little nuance there. Certainly they can regulate the exchanges. They can attempt to regulate the corporations or even the individuals within their borders. But I don't know if they can regulate Bitcoin itself.
True. Yeah, generally, yeah. That's a fair point, Craig. Thank you. The threat, yes, I may.
There is a little bit of an interesting twist that is how El Salvador is navigating its Bitcoin as a country. They're actually somewhat custodial over it, which is, I had a really powerful conversation with a girl who's been from El Salvador over the weekend, and we had a really strong discussion about this because of the sovereignty over the keys that Ben always talks about, like not your keys, not your wallet, right? And El Salvador is custodial. It's being custodian of the Bitcoin that they're doing. Like the government's a custodian. And I mean, if you imagine what Ben talks about with not your wallet, not your keys, if you imagine the tragedy that's in that, is that if you get the Bitcoin and the keys are not yours, and this is being shared with many of the people who are not as familiar with the understanding of that security, how many of those El Salvadorians are actually going into the wolf's mouth, I guess I would say, where they would want this financial freedom and sovereignty. However, if the government's holding the custodial keys, then does that make it the Bitcoin belonging to the people, or is it belonging to the government for the people?
So you're saying that the wallet that El Salvadorian government issues doesn't have the ability to transfer private keys?
Craig, that is exactly what I took away from the conversation with the young lady this weekend, which made me a little bit apprehensive and a little bit more concerned, because that was so succinctly put, and that's what is a bit scary, because now that means the government could have the control of that Bitcoin and access to it whenever they want, for whatever reason.
So they're making Bitcoin their own central bank digital currency in effect.
Yeah, I mean, but that's why I said it's very interesting, right, Tyler? Because we already talked about how, like, Uruguay and Chile, I think the education component is so important here.
But that's relevant if they use the government wallet, but the government has said you can use any wallet you want.
Yeah, but think about the education level
of
Bitcoin. It's not there. I mean, the girl I was talking to knows the folks that own Bitcoin Beach, but she's Spanish herself. So we were just having this dialogue in a room because it's really powerful. As Craig stated, there's a lot of questions. And part of the reason why the people in El Salvador are a little bit annoyed is because of what I was just sharing about the custodial being the government. And yes, Tyler, they could have the opportunity to use another wallet, but how many will? How many will use another wallet if they don't know how to set that wallet up? And being Hispanic myself and understanding the generations and how they are, they may just want to be like, all right, this is too complicated. Let's just use the government one.
Well, they get $30 in Bitcoin for setting up the government wallet.
Well, there you go. It's incentivizing people to use it, but it doesn't necessarily mean the
Right, but
incentivizing.
we need to investigate,
Yeah.
and that would be a headline. That would make breaking news if that were to be true. So let's see if that is true.
I'll dig into it.
Okay.
Thanks,
The
Jeff.
other thing
Okay.
is, if that is
It,
true,
it's
that
called
allows the government to be.
it's
I'm sorry.
Chivo,
Trader Joe's, Chris.
CHIVO, Craig. Chivo wallet, which allows
Yeah,
citizens, including many who do not have bank accounts, to send and receive Bitcoin denominated payments. Right. So you just banked everybody in the country. How dare you? How
And
fucking
the
dare
government.
El Salvador, how fucking dare you bank all your people who are unbanked?
I'm also going to ask a question to that lawyer that from Costa Rica, because she's actually in Latin America right now. She's traveling. She's en route to El Salvador. So I'll also ask her personally and see what she says, because something here I just want to make sure in my mind's eye that this is something that is in fact helping the people, with, like you said, Tyler, to bank the unbanked, which is fascinating and really necessary, but just that as long as it's keeping people's thoughts in mind and
Right.
people's livelihood in mind as well.
Yes, that would be
As long as they don't shut it down, right? As long
I-
as they don't use it as a means to shut down their, based off social, things they say,
Correct.
authoritarianism.
Yeah,
Basically,
Chris, that is
concern.
what was the fear of this young lady that bought it up on the weekend.
let's find out.
And
We could
it
break
was a
some
really
big ass
important
news.
conversation.
That would be
Good luck.
that would be that would be big news through the cryptocurrency, and it would be a huge pie in the face of the El Salvadorian government if that turns out to be true, and they would be forced to make a statement as to why they're doing that. It says, but the app has been plagued by technical failures, according to the New York Times, and many ATMs ran out of money as people rushed to convert Bitcoin holdings into the more stable dollar bills. The government also said it has set aside $150 million, 12% of El Salvador's public investment budget. Despite shortages of public funds, Mr. Bukele announced in a series of tweets that his government bought $30 million worth of Bitcoin last month, with the cryptocurrency's price temporarily plunged afterward. He announced new purchases, their purpose unexplained, nearly a month after. No, he did explain it. I heard it. I think Cheryl did as well in a Twitter Spaces room. He explained exactly why he was needed to buy a pool of Bitcoin. New York Times, stop doing this nonsense, please. Nearly a month after the introduction of Bitcoin, it remains unclear where the dollar funds and the Bitcoin held by the government or reflected in Chivo wallets are, or what they are worth. Although all Bitcoin transactions carry a code to ensure transparency, Mr. Bukele has treated the Bitcoin policy as a state secret. He has classified all information related to Chivo Wallet, which was created with taxpayer funds, but it is run as a private enterprise by undisclosed individuals. Now we're getting into some interesting journalism here. He is playing Russian roulette with public money, says Ruth Lopez, an El Salvadorian lawyer at the nonprofit organization Cristosal, which sued the government over the Chivo wallet financing irregularities. Mr. Bukele, his ministers of economy and finance, the trade secretary and attorney general, the head of the Congressional Economic Committee, the financial regulator, the central bank, and the state bank financing the Bitcoin fund all declined to comment. Well, yeah, no one's talking to you anymore, New York Times, because you're not what you used to be, sadly. On the streets, the policy's impact has been mixed. Okay, but that's not what your headline said. Your headline says, that they're forcing authoritarianism on a population who doesn't want it. And now you say, and buried in the middle of the article, on the streets, the policy's impact is mixed. It's a slightly different tone. I guess you're playing the clickbait game. We get it. You're a tabloid now. But Mr. Bukele says,
one thing in
yes.
defense of the New York Times, not that I really wanted to defend them, but I just wanted to point out, because I'm just looking at it as I'm talking to you, that on October 10th, which is for me it's yesterday, for you it's 2 days ago, I guess, they allowed a psychiatry professor who's apparently written 500 articles on teenage adolescence. That's his specialty, a guy from Temple University, and he wrote a column. I'll just give you the title. It says, does Instagram harm girls? ? No one actually knows. So he actually, if you read through the whole thing, starts to go into some of the stuff that they either left out or that was one-sided. So they allowed this guy to write a guest opinion that was kind of against, the thesis that they in the Wall Street Journal, are doing. So you have to give them some credit for some balance there.
Okay.
And I just want to point it out. Okay.
Yeah. Please send it to me. I didn't see that one. Yeah. So here they get into a good point about the lack of transparency about how the state of El Salvador, the nation of El Salvador, is how they've architected this whole Bitcoin wallet. That's kind of interesting, although I don't know that governments traditionally are transparent about their inner financial workings to publications like the New York Times. Okay, but what Amay is touching on is far more interesting and more to the point, is who holds the keys to these Bitcoins that these people are now dealing in their wallets. So let's find that out, and let's do an end run around the New York Times and actually get to the heart of the matter. Okay, a few fundraising announcements. Brazil-based Favo, a social commerce startup focused on groceries. Social commerce is the hybrid of social media and e-commerce, and now there's one in Brazil called Favo, focused on groceries, raises $26 million, led by Tiger Global. Esper, a DevOps service, lets companies deploy and manage fleets of Android-based IoT devices, raises $60 million. Following a BBC investigation, Facebook bans buying and selling Amazon rainforest land in ecological conservation areas. That's a brilliant article. Nobody covered it other than the BBC, and the BBC only covered it because they were the ones who found the problem. And kudos to the BBC, who's still doing real journalism in 2021. And as the headline says itself, from the BBC, following a BBC investigation about Amazonian rainforest land was being sold illegally inside of Facebook. Now, that's just because that's what people use in that part of the world to sell anything, their motorbikes and their, old furniture and their old clothes and everything, and land. And as Lakeisha knows, if you go into the marketplace app here in Thailand, you're going to see a whole lot of land for sale. Everyone's using Facebook Marketplace to sell their farmland and their bungalows and their houses and everything. That's not unusual at all. So the fact that the that land is being sold in the Amazon in Brazil in Facebook is no surprise at all. That means nothing. The fact that some of it's illegal also has nothing to do with Facebook. Facebook just provides the tools. If people are going to do illegal shit on there, by the way, people are using their cell phones to also sell this illegal land in the Amazon, by the way, because as soon as you contact them on Facebook, they'll say, here's my phone number, call me on this, and let's talk directly off of Facebook. Well, are we then going to go after the cell phone companies for playing an accessory in the selling of illegal Amazonian land? No, we're not. And we shouldn't go after Facebook either. The question is, Facebook and the phone companies are in a position to try and stop this kind of behavior. And they have. They just did. As soon as the BBC did this investigation, Facebook said, what if, is there a map somewhere in Brazil or the other countries that bordering that make up the Amazon? Are there maps that can show us where the legitimate sellable land is and where the national park preserved Amazon rainforest land is? And then we can superimpose this map and this data on top of where they're trying to sell the land. And if they're trying to sell illegal land, we will know. So give us the maps and we'll fix that. Cool? They did that. Facebook did that. And so the BBC, God bless them, updated and said, following a BBC investigation about the illegal selling of land in the Amazon rainforest, Facebook bans buying and selling of Amazon rainforest land in ecological conservation areas because they got the maps from the government. Great. You found a problem. It's up to you to provide the solution. Give them the maps so that they can put that in place. And they did. And there you have an actual journalist doing actual journalism on both ends. Finding the problem, and full circle finding the solution. And this, my friends, points out the fact that Facebook is not a bad actor in this particular case. That when pointed out a problem and when there's a potential solution, the solution is put in, bada boom, bada bing. And that could be a foreshadowing of what's to come with this whole Instagram scenario, which there's already evidence of that foreshadowing coming to fruition, because Nick Clegg just said on CNBC or whatever network he went on that we're already going to start nudging young ladies who watch too much harmful content when they're binge eating at the buffet of content that we know, and they know, if they have any brains at all, they know is hurting their own body self-image. But if they don't know, and some people don't, some people are just tragically, terminally stupid, we're going to nudge them away. And again, this is the foreshadowing that they're actually going to be a good behavior. And kudos, I mean, they did actually at one point imply, like, what about TikTok? But this must be very hard to be Facebook at this moment, knowing what's going on over at TikTok and getting all this heat without saying, what about TikTok? Anyway, back to the other headlines. New York City-based customer data infrastructure company mParticle raises $150 million. A deep dive into the iPhone 13 Pro's macro mode, including how it works and the shortcuts Apple took to make it work seamlessly for most users. Wall Street Journal says a profile of an interview with the CEO on Qualcomm's auto industry push and the acquisition of Veoneer, which we read last week in a headline, as he navigates the global chip shortage. And then the Wall Street Journal has a piece on filmmakers are using AI to create foreign language versions of their movies using samples of the original actors' voices, and we covered that one previously. And that's a lovely way to use that innovation. Okay, those are your big boring headlines today that your cousins will talk about later this week at your family barbecue. And now we get into the tweets. Like this one from Karam, who shares news that Pakistan offers investment around $350 million invested in Pakistani startup sector last year, according to its board of investor relations, to which India is laughing itself silly. They have multiple startups raising that amount. Single startups. There are Indian startups who raise $350 million today and yesterday and tomorrow and the day after that and the day before that. There are startups raising $350 million in India every day. In Pakistan, Pakistan raised $350 million all year.
You know, Tyler, basically, let me give you a little bit of background. So 2019, the total amount was about 34 million. And 2020, it was 72. So it's doubled. And now this year, just in 8 months, has gone over, 300 million. So that's why it's just such a big thing, because nobody was just looking at Pakistan to be something which would be another powerhouse. India has got a very long head start. I mean, it's been going on for almost 2009, 2010. And Pakistan was just nowhere. I mean, literally nowhere in the startup scene, although there were tons of startups were actually flourishing over the time, but the funding wasn't coming in. So likes of Klein and Perkins and, the Chinese one coming in, other Far Eastern ones coming in. So to jump from 70 million to 300 plus or so, I thought it was worthy of news.
Thank you for that. Okay, next one up from CSQ, from Bloomberg. A vending machine for steaks and sausages. A butcher says yes. How a pandemic fix became a permanent for a small business in Germany. Would you buy your meat from a vending machine? I just tweeted out the photo to the Tech News Twitter account, and you can see these meats kind of air vacuum shrunk wrapped in, and it actually looks quite cool, I gotta say. Once you see I think you should look at the photo before you answer. And
I have a thing for vending machines. Like if it's in a vending machine, it makes me instantly want it for some reason. Maybe because I was one of those kids, right? Latchkey kid. So you get $1. It's not just a candy bar. It's a whole world of like choices. I'm sorry.
In the 1950s, at least in the United States, they used to have vending machines that sold sandwiches. I mean, they don't have them anymore, but I've seen, things like on, black and white, film of it.
Welcome to Japan to check the vending machines.
Japan, there's nothing you can't buy in a vending machine in Japan, by the way. Hot or cold. Uh-huh.
And I'm also anti-vending machine.
I don't even know if I've seen hot vending machines outside of Japan. By the way, the latest Japanese vending machines, the entire front of the screen, the entire front of the vending machine is a huge screen digitally that shows you the products inside the vending machine. And you can fit way more products on the screen and all the data and information and make it gamified, and it has motion and everything else. It's wild. They're really cool.
Tyler.
Yeah.
That's super cool what you're just saying, because there is a very there's a ramen place over here in Amsterdam called Ramen Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And before, when you used to order, clearly like before the pandemic, you used to actually be able to purchase the way you do it in Japan. It's actually got a 4.9 rating. I highly recommend it if you're in Amsterdam to go check out Ramen Kingdom. But the interesting part about it is that they changed after the pandemic to make a massive screen where you make your ordering straight from the screen. You even pay it there, and then you take a ticket.
That's
and
Japan.
You wait outside.
Congratulations! You just figured out what Japan started in the 60s. So when you walk into
it was very interesting because they have like all of the Mario Brothers and all of the cutesy sort of underground like art components of it, like with gamification.
Yes.
And even the chefs actually play with the characters when they're serving you.
So, for those who don't know, I know what Tomoko's going to say here. When you walk into any ramen shop or any beef bowl shop in Japan, you walk in the front door. Immediately at the front door, there's a little machine where you put in your money. And then you order from the machine what you're going to want to eat. And then it prints a little ticket. And then you sit down and you hand your ticket to the chef and they make it. Done. And then you eat and then you leave. Those are all the old diners in Japan all have that. I mean, and these diners are from, I think some of them go back to the 50s. But that's been the default for a very long time. So the next one is from CSQ. From Reuters, that hackers in the SolarWinds breach, which was one of the biggest breaches in American history, stole data on U.S. sanctions policies, intelligence probes. The suspected Russian hackers who used SolarWinds and Microsoft software to burrow into U.S. federal agencies emerged with information about counterintelligence and U.S. sanctions. Which makes sense because America was sanctioning Russia. So that data was of keen interest to them at the time. The next one is the vending machines. We covered that. CSQ also sends in this one from Financial Times. Companies prepare for a quote-unquote selective decoupling with China for foreign businesses operating in the Middle Kingdom. That's code word for China, because that's what China calls itself. The Middle Kingdom. It may be best to plan for uncertainty. So the Financial Times now tipping off everyone that we're going to go through a big old decoupling. The Asia-based managing partner of one of the world's largest law firms last week set out what he reckoned was the prevailing story of financial business in China in the first quarter of 2021. Corporate clients are spooked by a range of factors, he said, adding that global supply chains established over the past 2 decades are in unprecedented flux, and the operative word in boardrooms is decoupling. And did I not?
This is just like when they broke up. Gwyneth Paltrow and whatever, they had that conscious decoupling, right?
Yep. But Chris,
we're breaking up, guys.
You'll recall I said the word decoupling would become the big word of
Yep.
the months to come, and here it is.
Tyler, you're and I'm not just blowing smoke. You're like Tyler Stradamus for us. That's why we're here. You know, you give us a view of about 2 to 3 months in the future, and then all of a sudden what we talk about here is everywhere.
And you can trade on this information, folks, but this is not a financial advice room. But you too can benefit greatly if you learn how to read the tea leaves effectively. So, yes, America and China America wants nothing more than to decouple from China. We're going home is what the word being used internally. And we're telling all of our allies to no longer do business with China. And China knows that we're telling all of our allies to no longer do business in China. And it really started with Huawei, with the 5G. And we're spreading out from there, and we're decoupling everything. We no longer want to do business. We no longer want to play ball. We're taking our ball with our allies, and we're going home, and we're leaving you, and you can make friends with whoever you want to make friends with, and you can come play with us. We're going to go continue our soccer ball match over here in a new park, and you can stay and play with China if you wish in their park, and hope that they play fairly with you. With the rest of the Western world, we're going over here. That's what's happening. And now China knows it. And now you know why China called the new Prime Minister of Japan over the weekend and says, hey, we need to be friends again. What's this all about? This is getting out of hand. Let's just be friends. And we need to cool things down and stay cool and be cool. And we're cool, right? Now that you're the new Prime Minister, I'm the boss over here in China. We're going to be friends. It's all going to be great, right? And Japan said, yeah, right. Sure, buddy. Good luck.
We need that "Why Can't We Be Friends" song.
But China's trying to do, and China's calling Biden. Hey, Biden, we're going to be cool, right? It's all cool. We need to de-escalate. Why is China now calling America and its allies, begging, because it knows what's going to happen now, and now sees the writing clearly on the wall. I'll share the headlines here on our Twitter account. Give me 5 minutes. He calls up the new prime minister from Japan, talking all super sweet and nice, and we're going to be friends, and let's get all this trade back together again, right? You're going to still buy our stuff, right? You still love us, right? You're still going to send the money, right? Right? And
Tyler,
yes,
this is really going to impact supply chain as it already is already, and you could clearly see it in the stores of Holland and Germany, because when you start going into these stores, and I kind of put on my fashion hat from having studied supply chain at FIT and NYU for ecom, you'll start to see the impact on the supply chain by the empty shelves that you're seeing now in many of these sort of like the Conways or the Jumbos or the Hamas, these like TJ Maxx, TK Maxx. You'll start to see it in those stores. And as a forecaster for Levi, one of the things I'm noticing is the merchandising and the replenishment is really stale, which means they're not replenishing as normally as they would if they understood their numbers and their deliveries as they were coming in. So someone who's a forecaster or a buyer will be able to see that on a plan and be able to mitigate it. But what I'm seeing here is that it's happened so much that now there's a lot of empty shelves inside these stores, and you're also hearing it in the grumblings of like Germany, France, Netherlands, where now they're doing a lot more stuff of getting products created in-house, like in their own country, like what you just described. It's
the reshoring move.
Yeah, they're basically bringing it back into their home. Now, the unique part about Netherlands is that it may get its competitive advantage even more back because it has the largest port in Europe. So it would be very interesting to see what happens to that port in terms of deliveries coming in and what countries would be the next ones to start bringing product in. And I would not be surprised if it starts being another country like Africa or something like that, because the Dutch are the global tradesmen. They have access to the Rotterdam port, and they'll bring in ships and containers. So my curiosity now is who's going to be the next one to start providing a large lion's share of the production of daily products like
like
Just
clothing.
just remember where Taiwan ROC was before Bretton Woods.
Correct.
Taiwan was the little powerhouse of manufacturing, especially
But
in
Taiwan
Kaohsiung.
always did better than
Yeah,
China, Chris. We always appreciated the
the
craftsmanship of Taiwan.
quality, quality craftsmanship, the machining. They're the
Correct.
world's. They're some of the world's best machinists.
Yeah,
Right
I
up
agree
there
with
with the
you.
Swiss.
One of the things that used to happen in the fashion industry, which is really fascinating, is most of us knew and understood that if we wanted quality, it was not coming out of China. It was coming out of another country. But if we wanted cheap and fast, it was China, right? However, now because of the way people are now asking for more quality, it's now become, and the Chinese yuan and the dollar coming kind of somewhat in their own sort of world, a little bit closer to each other, just philosophically. What's happening now is that China, in order to keep their margins, they have to outsource to countries like Vietnam, like other parts of Southeast Asia, to make their margins. If they can't, then they would be struggling with their open to buys. However, what you just said, Chris, is really fascinating, because what that's going to do is shine a light on the creativity and the talent of the other countries in Asia that have talent, like Vietnam, like Cambodia, like Taiwan. So you start to see that. And that is what, in essence, I have always noticed in studying the region for school, that when you start sourcing for fashion, you have to understand the quality of what you're producing and the brand quality that's attached to your brand. And whether or not your mission statement is to provide cheap and fast with a flashy brand, like, where do you sit on the quadrant, right, Chris? Where do you sit on the quadrant? High cost, high quality, low cost, low quality. Where do you sit on the quadrant, right? That's always been my fascinating thing, because when you see a lot of these products that are cheap, they end up costing you in the long run because they don't have the quality control on them. So you could end up spending like 4 times on something in a course of a year, that if you just paid the full price of the actual real quality product, you will probably have it for 2-3 years. But people don't shop like that because of fast fashion. They want everything fast, quick, and cheap. But fast,
Buy
quick, and
once,
cheap.
cry once, it's called.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you get what you pay for. The fashion industry is always known you get what you pay for. So if you want fast, cheap, and quick, then just be prepared to be replacing it 4 or 5 times a year. That's it. And if you have that kind of money, great. But if you don't have that kind of money, then you might want to reconsider. The challenge now is the least sustainable is the fashion industry. So now, where do we contribute to fixing up the problem of extra garments, finishings and fixings that are tossed outside the factory, factories not looking out for the workers that are in there? For example, in India, which you had Primark as one of the companies that was in there. So these are just things that people really have to change behaviors, and in some ways have to be more empathic. And I'm kind of with Tyler to some degree, where it's like, look, if people don't sort themselves out, the world is going to sort it out for them. That's it.
Okay.
But Amy, that's where the real economy driver are the Target, Walmart, J.C. Penney,
No,
Kohl's.
it's actually the consumer. It's the consumer it's the consumer. Tyler has said this a lot. It's the consumer. Consumers have more power with their money than they think. They totally have more power than their money. And I've seen this when working with Levi Strauss as a forecast and replenisher. Consumers drive a lot. They just don't necessarily take the time to use their dollars, their yen, and their money wisely. They just get caught up in the busyness of life, get caught up in day-to-day stuff with kids, husbands, and whatever, and then they just go for what's quick and easy, which unfortunately, as Chris, with the drive up at Target, it made it easy for you as a dad. It
But
made
the
it easy
clothes
for you to
fall
get stuff.
apart, and the clothes fall apart in
Correct.
the wash after about
Exactly.
10 washes, and my wife's like, hey, I like it, it looks fashionable, but it falls apart really quick. So
Correct.
no, you're dead on.
So this is the challenge, but it's consumers that have to use their money, which is why Tyler's thesis around consumer, prosumer, and social commerce, and Lakeisha's love of that woman who makes dresses locally that she goes back to constantly. That is what we need more of. Those are conscious consumers. Those are present consumers. They're not just robots that are just going out to buy something, pick it up, and take it home, and then it breaks, and then they go back and rinse and repeat. No.
Lakeisha's built a relationship with this woman. She's always going to have a really amazing experience with that. Tyler talks about prosumer and social commerce, and that's how all of these young adults of the future, they're all going to be selling their own products and services at some point. And that's why TikTok's nailed it.
Okay. Next up, Ken and MAU, do we have an update on where Tether's CEO is run off to?
No, maybe he's shopping for some stuff at Target. I don't know.
The Bloomberg article says, anyone seen Tether's billions? A wild search for the US dollar, supposedly backing the stablecoin at the center of the global cryptocurrency trade. It's been reported lately that it's somebody revealed that they did some investigation and they're reporting that it was backed by a lot of Chinese paper. And maybe that...
Tyler, that's actually correct, because that's what I was just going to say to you. Has anyone seen CZ tweeting as of late?
Why?
CZ's the CEO of finance.
I know.
But has anyone seen him tweeting anything?
This is my quote. What's he doing? What's going on?
Exactly, because the top 3 wallets are the ones that are holding the top 3 wallets, managing the Binance exchange as well. They are heavily loaded in USDT.
Which might be based on Chinese paper, which might be falling apart.
Correct.
Oh boy! Oh shit!
This article to Tyler. Okay, so they were talking about supposedly Tether's supposed to have I think there's 68 billion in circulation, all supposedly backed by U.S. dollars or something similar, right? To give you a sense of how much money that is and why it's kind of unbelievable, I don't think they've ever actually accounted for 68 billion. Facebook, 64. Which nobody apparently... What?
64, is it?
I think it's 68 for Tether and 64 for Facebook.
Okay.
It's a very close number.
Yep.
So my point is Facebook actually has $64 billion
sure.
in cash and U.S. government securities on their balance sheet as of June 30th, audited by Ernst & Young.
Yep.
So when I hear stories, but no matter what else Facebook did, when I hear stories of people saying they wouldn't accept a stable coin from Facebook, like whatever they call it, the DM or whatever the other one, with the other name that you were going to give it, I would take Facebook over Tether any day, because I know they've got the cash to back up that stable coin. So, I mean, and so the point of the Bloomberg article is that they're basically implying this could be a bigger financial scandal than Madoff by an exponent. So
I think the most recent audit, I'm not sure about the Ernst & Young, Ken, but the most recent auditors quit. And that's maybe within the past 60 days or so.
No, I'm talking Facebook's auditors are Ernst & Young, not Tether's.
Well, Tether's auditors quit.
Yeah, well, there you go. Okay, yeah.
they couldn't even sign on the dotted line, so they had to quit.
And it wasn't a big firm. I mean, I saw the name. I'm not sure. Sometimes there are firms that maybe they're 15th or 20th or 30th or something. But I didn't recognize the name of their accountants. That's for sure.
Okay, next up, from Luis from Newsweek. The headline from Newsweek says China slams Abbott, who was the former Prime Minister of Australia, Abbott was warning that China could lash out disastrously over Taiwan as Xi vows unification. So this is Newsweek. On Saturday, Chinese officials slammed recent remarks by former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott that China could lash out disastrously very soon over Taiwan, while President Xi vowed complete reunification. The comments followed China flying record number of warplanes into Taiwan's air defense zone in recent days, and escalating tension between Beijing and Washington over the self-governing island. On Friday, Abbott said of China, sensing that its relative power might have peaked, with its population aging, its economy slowing, and its finances creaking, it's quite possible that Beijing could lash out disastrously very soon. It sounds like Mr. Abbott might be listening to Tech News Around the World. That's exactly the same conclusions that we're coming up with here. That its population's aging, its economy slowing, and its finances creaking and that its relative power might have peaked, as I was just saying. And even President Xi recently is making moves that indicate that he's become aware of the dire predicament that China's now in by reaching out to Japan, who, if you understand Chinese-Japanese relations, they hate each other. They really, really hate each other. And for Xi to reach out to Japan's new prime minister and say, we're all good, right? We're going to be best buddies, huggy, right? High fives, right? We're bros, right, bro? You're my dude, right, dude? That indicates that Xi understands what a tight spot they're in. And yeah, so Australia's prime minister's point is, kind of interesting. His comments came in a speech at the Yushan Forum in Taipei, where he called upon Beijing to scale back the aggression. The Chinese embassy in Australia shot back on Saturday, describing Abbott as a failed and pitiful politician. It concluded, his recent despicable and insane performance in Taiwan fully exposed his hideous anti-China features. This will only further discredit him. Abbott said he believes the U.S. will not stand by and watch Taiwan get swallowed up, and the Australia shouldn't be indifferent to the fate of a fellow democracy of almost 25 million people.
Hey, by the way, Tyler, I didn't send this to you because it really wasn't exactly tech, but you just touched on this right now, so I'll just tell you. The Wall Street Journal, 18 hours ago, had a massive article entitled "Beyond Evergrande, China's Property Market Faces a $5 trillion Reckoning." So, I mean, we're going to hear a lot more this month on all of this Chinese real estate stuff, because a lot of the stuff that's maybe they haven't made the payment, but they've got a grace period for 30 days or something, typically on bonds. So, I mean, we're going to find out what's going to get paid, what's not going to get paid, what's going to go into default. We're far from the end of the news headlines on real estate in China.
Can we zoom out on that number? I mean, 5 trillion. Our economy is estimated at 16 trillion as the United States. So China is not far behind. So they might be up to a third of their economy wiped out.
This is what the Wall Street Journal said.
China's at 12 trillion.
So, wow, 5 over 12. That's like 40%.
Yeah.
Analysts said why President Xi said a common prosperity and to distribute the wealth, because before that they already know the crisis from the real estate. Yeah, that's some analysis, but we should still keep our eyes on this Evergrande issues, because it really and other big company about real estate have this trouble as well. So it's not not only Evergrande.
Okay, next up.
Yep. And Tyler, we survived our nationality, so we are still here.
Oh, good.
Yay.
From CSQ sends in this one that the rise of the co-working robots. Robots target work site safety and efficiency. Job sites of the future are going to be better connected, with more tasks taking place off-site, while on-site robotics will be taking some of the most mundane tasks. And there's another article related coming up. Let me try and find it. There it is. That Boston Dynamics release Spot 3.0. So the robot dog's getting an upgrade. Adds flexible autonomy and repeatable data capture. Spot is the data collection solution for safer and more efficient inspections. I think they're seeing that the people who buy it and use it the most are ones who use it for inspection purposes, like construction sites and whatnot. And CSQ sends in this one from the BBC that legal action over alleged Uber facial verification bias. Oh, we covered this one last week. The unions claim the Microsoft facial verification system used in Uber is worse at identifying people with darker skin. Legal action over Uber facial recognition, because for you to be an Uber driver, it used to be you would just get in the car and drive. And then it was found out that some drivers who were legitimate Uber drivers were letting their friends drive and so that their friend could make some money while they sit at home. And so drivers were sharing their credentials with their friends. And then some Uber customers noticed, hey, wait a minute. The driver you told me who would pick me up is not the person in the car who's driving the car. And then they report them. And then this was starting to happen quite a lot, actually. And so Uber said, listen, you can't have your friends who are felons, who are, we understand they need to make a living, but we have to verify them. And they can, if they want to work for Uber, they can apply for Uber. But of course, we wouldn't accept them because they're felons in some cases, which is why they're coming to you and asking you, hey, can I use your credentials to drive this car and make some money on the side, right? So, Uber said, okay, we can fix this. We have to do facial recognition of the driver when they're driving the car. And then it turns out that facial recognition doesn't work as well on very dark-skinned faces of the drivers. And so now the unions are suing because these facial recognition systems don't work as well, and that a driver is saying, and this is where it gets really interesting, a driver says, oh, you said I wasn't who I said I was. So your facial recognition is racist. And now we're suing you. And Uber has come to court with their documents and said, sir, whenever the system says that there's a false match, we send it to a human to review. So your claim that the algorithm is racist means nothing. Because in those instances, in every one of those cases, when there's a false match, or when it says it's not when it doesn't pass as normal as it should, that's just a trigger to send it to a human. So a human is the one who decided that your friend couldn't drive the car. To be continued. We'll see how this court case shakes out. But the lawsuit is underway, but we'll see what the judge decides.
I'm just curious, why did the human Chuck said he can't drive? Is there another reason, or
why did the human says you can't drive? Because you're not the person who's the authenticated driver.
Oh, so he wasn't actually the authenticated.
Well, according to Uber, according to Uber's humans, they said this wasn't the person that was the driver. So we said you can't drive the car. But the driver's claiming, no, it was me. But he didn't know that humans had reviewed it. They're making the case based on the assumption that there was no human review. Similar to the Subway tuna lawsuit that just happened and got thrown out of court, because the people who were suing Subway over not having tuna just showed up to court with the news article claiming as their defense that Subway didn't have tuna. And the judge says, no, that's not how court cases work. You have to really, bring your own case with your own findings and everything else and file it properly. You can't just read a headline that Subway's not selling real tuna and then come and sue them.
Okay, so these people are not for real having problems.
We don't know. This is what Uber's saying in the court case. All we know is what's being said. We don't know what actually happened.
Okay.
To be really accurate, Uber's saying they had a double human verification. So in the case that a human says, somebody tries to verify their face in the car, 99 times out of 100, it goes through no problem, obviously. In the event that it doesn't go through, and it says, no, this is a no good, there's not a match here, that is a signal that sends it to a human reviewer. If the human reviewer says it's a match, no problem, it continues as normal. If the human says it's not a match, it then goes, guess where? To a second human. There's a double human verification system in place. And Uber's saying, we had two humans look at this. Both of them agreed, you're not the driver. So go ahead and try and sue us for our racist algorithm. Let's see how this plays out.
This is an interesting issue because one of my cousins, I think it was like 2 years ago. She ordered a cab or she ordered an Uber, and the driver that was on the app was a different driver behind the wheel. So yeah, it would be interesting to see how they can regulate it and get it right, because this can be a serious issue. As you said earlier, you could have felons behind the wheel that are not supposed to be driving. So yeah, it's quite interesting because I've actually one of my cousins experienced it firsthand. So yeah.
This is one of Uber's main value propositions, by the way, is they know much more about their drivers than taxis do, and they're able to cooperate with authorities when shit goes wrong in a way that taxis aren't. So they are very serious about making sure they know who's driving the cars and their backgrounds. So next one,
yeah, especially with all the bad press they've been getting and all the lawsuits, they definitely have to get this right.
Yeah. So the next one, CSQ sends in this one from the New York Times. And the headline says, using AI to find bias in AI. The problems of bias in AI, just like the last article we were talking about the facial recognition, for example, which is perhaps the most widely known example. The problem of bias in AI is facing increasing scrutiny from regulators and is a growing business for startups and tech stalwarts. Okay. Let's retweet that one out for everyone to deep dive. And then the next one's from Reuters, that Tesla's Brandenburg factory becomes festival site for GigaFest, which just happened yesterday, by the way. And for those of you who had friends outside of Berlin at Tesla's factory party, as I did, it looked like it was a very fun party with a lot of DJs and a carnival wheel and a whole lot of fun. And they were giving people factory tours all day. And Elon Musk gave a speech and demonstrated his not so impressive German abilities. He tried. He got some applause from the audience, but not an easy language to speak as far as I'm concerned. But from flashing lights and booming speakers to sprawling stages and a Ferris wheel, Tesla's factory near Berlin has been transformed into a festival site. And because it's kind of a hiring event as well. So there it is. They overcame incredible friction, by the way, in getting this factory set up. And because Germany has a lot of big car competitors, you might say, who certainly weren't making it easy for Tesla to set up a factory in Germany, as you might understand. The environmentalists came out in oh boy, did they get creative. Holy cow. I bet they imagined they had a documentary filmmaker along for the ride on that one. That was some really wild roller coaster shenanigans behind the scenes in getting that factory built. The next one, RCC sends in this one from the New York Times, and the headline reads, Lifestyles of the Rich and Gullible. Theranos and Aussie edition. Average investors were not able to get in on the last decade startup boom in private markets. Once that seemed unfair, now it looks lucky. Why? Because there's been two kind of fraud startups lately, which notably have practically no Silicon Valley investors involved for the most part. Very, very, very few. Disproportionately not Silicon Valley investors. So it says Aussie media told investors it had strong financial performance, seemingly impressive viewership metrics, and significant institutional investor interest, according to a firm that heard the pitch. In return, it got $2 million in funding, adding to its $83 million in funding. Last week, the firm sued alleged fraud and concealment. So that's about Aussie media, which is in the headlines lately for this kind of fraud-like fundraising. Elizabeth Holm used endorsements from pharmaceutical companies to convince investors that machines made by Theranos, her blood testing startup, could conduct hundreds of tests using a finger stick of...
Hey, Tyler, I have a tiny bit of insight on that.
Go ahead.
I was talking to somebody on Friday about Walgreens, and basically Walgreens does business on it You fill out an application, and at the very end, you give a price, and they basically accept you. They don't even know. They don't even care if the technology works or not. So when I was talking to this person, he's our new VP of sales. I said to him, like, do you think that's how Theranos got in there? Because Walgreens accepts everybody. And remember, Theranos was bragging that Walgreens had taken them on, right? It was probably just because they knew how the system worked and knew that anyone who applied at Walgreens would get accepted as long as they were the lowest bidder. So that's just a little bit of insight. I don't have any receipts, but that's what I heard, and I kind of drew that conclusion. So I'm sorry to add that, but that's a little bit
There was
interesting.
a story. I think it was at Walgreens with Theranos that some executive at Walgreens met Elizabeth Holmes and was very impressed with her, and so he signed off on the deal. And then he got very frustrated when the stuff didn't happen. If I can find the story, I'll send it to you. I just read it the other day.
So it says,
But yeah, I just heard they take anything as long as it's the lowest bid. They don't, because they don't care about the technology. Is my point. Like, they don't care if it works. You could say, "Hey, I make a thermometer," and you've never made a thermometer before in your life. It doesn't actually meet the
No, but
spec.
this was apparently part of a longer range plan. They wanted to get more in healthcare. I'm going to see if I can find the story for you. I'll
All
send
right,
it.
I'll stop speculating. That's the main point, Ken. You're right.
so it talks about first Ozzy and then Theranos, where she raised a whole bunch of money. And then it says these startup scandals have given the world memes. And when the dot-com bubble of the 90s came crashing down, the Main Street Joe and Jane investors who poured in their when a startup implodes, the venture capitalists, the celebrities and billionaires lose. It was Rupert Murdoch who backed Theranos. Yep, keep that in mind. He's not from Silicon Valley. He has practically nothing to do with Silicon Valley. And it was Laurene Powell Jobs, Steve Jobs' widow, who invested in Aussie Media. Yes, and Laurene, God bless her, really isn't an investor in tech startups. As I said, yes, these two very high-profile fraud failures, for the most part, they weren't backed by the traditional Silicon Valley investors. Then the next paragraph says, the drumbeat of high-profile implosions serves as a reminder how risky the startup gamble is. Does it? No, by the way, Silicon Valley investors know how risky startup investing is, and these ones don't really help to remind us of that. And how frequently companies stretch the truth to get ahead. No, generally, no. There's thousands of startups every day that get funded. You've picked two that were fraud, and Silicon Valley investors didn't invest in them. So I'm not quite sure what your point is here. If the wealthy were supposed to have the resources and sophistication to do their due diligence, the scandals show they didn't. Yeah, well, Miss Jobs isn't a VC firm with a due diligence team. So clearly she didn't. And it appears Rupert Murdoch, who's also not a VC investor, also didn't do the proper due diligence. Right. That's why when you raise a lot of money from non-VC Silicon Valley investors, there's an opportunity for fraud. And maybe that's why they sought out non-traditional tech investors, because tech investors do what's called due diligence. That's why they didn't get wrapped up in this bullshit. So maybe the article should be written about how non-savvy tech investors are suckers and charlatans are going to seek them out.
Hey, Tyler, can we check the hand raise?
Sure. The New York Times just fundamentally is drawing totally false conclusions out of this. They don't seem to understand the context, the cultural context of the whole thing. Here's Jonathan and LS. What's going on, Jonathan?
Yeah, that high net worth individuals, they already are sophisticated. They know that if they make 10 investments, maybe 3 of them pan out. First of all, the money might be coming from offshore funds that they haven't declared, so
Right.
therefore haven't paid tax on, or they make it efficient. So if they do make an investment and it goes to the wall, they can claim that all back off of future tax payments.
And then the article here in the last paragraph says, Ozzy and Theranos look like early warning signs, not outliers. Say what? There's been 1 million fucking startups that have received funding since Theranos. 1 million. And you're naming 2. You don't think they're outliers? The most extreme scenarios always fail first. There are hundreds, if not thousands, more that are likely to fail if confidence continues to deteriorate. What the fuck are you babbling about?
Hey, Tyler.
Yeah.
Sorry I'm late. I'll be brief. I just wanted to pop in because I just joined in, but a lot of this is just intriguing to me, and I was just going to listen in. But you're right. I think you've discussed this before. We have in tech news around the world of old money trying to get into a new tech game. And let me finish one point because I just got the book and it's blowing my mind. But you're right, okay, because you grew up in the city in the hood. But we are changing the world, so let's keep hope alive. But AI 2041 is a book that just came out by Kai-Fu Lee, which I've got and I'm reading. And everyone should just read that because it talks about 20 years from now where AI will really be, good and bad. And more than that, they're scared because they've made money with real estate and all this old money. And they don't, and you know, full disclosure to everyone in the room, I'm crowdfunding because I won't give some person who says, I have money and I'm going to take 90% of your company. I'm going to say, step the fuck off because I have the tech, I have the team, and I have the knowledge. And that's where I think, Tyler, a new world is changing. So people who have that technology, the real core technology and the tech, won't give up anything for nothing. They'll just bootstrap it, figure it out or whatever. But this old, money game is changing, and that's dealing with, around the world, Thailand, Africa, everywhere else. So I just want to be clear on that and say that point where people are connecting and they will continue to change and they will continue to build. And so it's not going to be this old, we're the U.S., we'll control the reserve currency and you can't do anything. It's just going to keep continuing. That's my little preaching statement.
Yeah, and
so,
actually, I'm reading this article as you say that, and they do have a point. Their point is, as it says, more regular people are finding ways to invest in startups via new tech platforms and adding to a bubbly, inflated environment for startup investing. Yes, that's true.
But what was 2008? Bubbly. I mean, real estate. I'm sorry.
Yes, private tech companies raise blah blah blah. Their point is now what their point really should be, and they touch on it, is that regular people are investing in tech and they're going to get burned. Yes, they are, because they don't know the warning signs to look out for. That should be your headline.
But I think we'll all admit that if you're a tech company, you get an investment from Benchmark or Sequoia, that accelerates your business. The network that they have, the access to your market that they can offer is undoubtable. So there is an element of, even with high net worth individuals, for example, Murdoch, if you're a media tech startup, you want him to invest. You want access to his media empire. So there is a lot of value. And you'll see big industrialists, Amazon, Google, and the rest of big tech, if they can't carve out a position, make an investment in a tech company that they basically believe might have successful technology or something unique, then they'll try and kill it.
So check this out, Jonathan. Worth noting, by the way, Murdoch, in their investments, often invest with ad dollars. So they have a whole bunch of unsold ad inventory in their newspapers and publications, and they say, you're a startup. I bet you would love to run $10 million worth of ads. How about we give you $10 million worth of ads for some equity in your company that we're not going to look that closely at because we didn't pay anything for this $10 million of ad space that we can't sell. So we're giving it
That would be Facebook, given the way they inflate their ad figures.
Yeah, but Facebook isn't investing in the same scheme that I'm describing, that some media companies are now doing these ad deals for equity.
Yeah, and
I'll just
Tyler, to
make
your point, just to conclude, you're right. I agree with you 100%. And Jonathan Graylock is trying to, invest in minority companies and emerging companies. And at the end of the day, it has to come down to capital, not like what Tyler's saying, ad dollars or quid pro quo or
Right.
something they've already have an inventory to.
Right.
Because that's not going to help you build your company. And they're taking equity from that standpoint. That's not going to help you build anything. If you're trying to build the next Google or whatever, Facebook, how are you going to build it? So globally. And you need pure equity or capital. So that's why you're doing equity versus debt. And you do that and you just build it out and you have the team and you have the tech and you prove the tech. Let me be very clear. And thank you, Tyler, for saying this. But I'm adamantly on this. Tech needs to be proven, several times. It needs to be proven and consistently proven, and then we roll it out. But that's how you change the world. And so you don't just come up with this bullshit or whatever your hypothesis is. You have the team, you have the tech, and you build it out and you struggle. And that's the world it is. But, a lot of this is trying to make it fast or easy or marketing. And I think, it's interesting that this article came out with Walgreens and everything because I think they're trying to keep their legacy revenue going. To Chris's point on Walgreens real quickly, because I'm surprised that they did this, but they need to just, compete with Amazon or whatever. So they just check mark yes and join us. And, there's more problems versus good. That's all.
Okay, next up. CNBC, Dr. Donish sends in this one that from CNBC, depression rates have tripled during the pandemic. How to recognize the signs and respond to them. And then Jeff G sends in this one, super hot sand could help us store renewable energy. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory is testing a prototype for thermal energy storage using solar and wind power. And okay, Devoted Health closes $1.1 billion Series D funding. Kudos to a friend, Todd Park and the team. This is from Anna Marie, has a friend who is at Devoted Health. And then Cheryl found one from Japan Times that a drug that stops ALS progression found using cells from patients. The team reproduced the disease by cultivating cells derived from the skin of patients into motor neurons. That's very cool. And the next, that was reported in Japan Times. The next one's from RCC, from the Wall Street Journal. With Hollywood studios increasingly focused on streaming services, cinemas that will soon be out of business due to the streaming are exploring sports and live events, video game competitions, and seminars. The idea is that the movie theater becomes more of a gathering place. That's an interesting point from the Wall Street Journal. And then Cheryl.
But you talked about this before. Mm-hmm. Social gatherings, remember, WeWork, and not to be like Chris, but we're heading to this world, Tyler, but you've said this 8 months ago. My brain remembers all these things, but where we won't be trying to WeWork. I think maybe it was maybe a year ago or so when WeWork was crashing. You were like, offices are going to be repurposed. People will be more sociable. We were talking about that, and there was a headline. But, I think theaters and everything around the world will change. And I'm bullish on this book of, Kai-Fu Lee's AI 2041, because it's a sci-fi sort of reality mix. But it shows everything we're talking about in tech news around the world, what's coming. And he's predicting that it's futuristic now. And, Mark Benioff, CEO of Salesforce, is endorsing it. All these people are endorsing it, saying, this is the future. So sometimes, I think in tech news, we're kind of way ahead of what's coming. His book lays it out, but we're doing the, tactical points of daily news of what's coming. But people need to see the bigger picture because this is reality, I think now, even more than anything.
Okay, next up is from CSQ. France ponders the idea of a 32-hour work week, and I believe Spain just passed it, did they? Maybe somebody can, if there's someone from Spain, maybe Adriana knows, and Dave's back. Welcome back, Dave and Adriana. If anyone knows,
hey guys.
I believe Spain just passed a 32-hour work week, and apparently France is pondering the idea as well, according to Forbes.
Does that mean the working time directive is being updated? That's what they used to call it, Tyler, isn't it?
I don't know. That's
working time directive in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler, it already changed.
In Spain, right?
Yeah, it already changed.
And then Cheryl found this one from NPR, that diet sodas may prompt food cravings, especially in women and people with obesity. New research adds to growing concern over zero-calorie drinks. Consuming artificial sweeteners may confuse our body, leading to increased hunger. That's a problem. And the next one...
There's quite a bit of research on the effects of carbonate and aspartame and those kind of sweeteners and what they do to your gut microbiome and how it can cause inflammation, which is like... Anybody who knows things, inflammation is just basically the killer of everything. You don't want inflammation anywhere in your body. But it also causes... They've shown that it can... confuse the gut microbiome and cause it to travel further up into the upper reaches of the body and out of the normal areas where it would stay. So I think this is what that's referring to. And obviously the danger is because there's no sugar in it, it's often touted as healthy, but actually these things necessarily aren't. They can have a huge effect on your body and how you regulate your metabolism and hunger.
And Carl, to your point, and Carl, to your point, a lot of African Americans have done that. Obesity, and they would drink diet drinks, but hunger more. So I just hate hearing it, but thank you for your words, man.
Okay, next up from Dr. Fran, that Vario, who's kind of one of the most advanced VR systems, super high-end, very expensive VR setups, has begun testing a special event. So I tweeted that one out for those interested in very high-end VR, based out of Helsinki. And be curious to see if it looks like they have some news cooking up soon, an event where they're going to maybe release a new version, perhaps. And what do we got next? Is this one from RCC? We covered that one. Cheryl found one from Singapore. It says, caught on camera how 90,000 police cameras across Singapore help solve crimes. Let me guess, Cheryl, is it facial recognition in Singapore? Singapore, on closed-circuit TV footage, a masked man in dark clothes scurries across an empty road. He then disappears into the corner of the frame before being spotted scuttling down a narrow street. He wouldn't have known it then, but he was less than 17 hours away from being arrested by the police for assaulting a 92-year-old man and robbing him of $1,200 earlier that morning. Footage from the police cameras showed him walking from a certain estate towards Jalan Enam, where the robbery happened. Cameras then caught him heading back in the same direction where he came from. Based on that, we basically combined limitless numbers of cameras around the estate until we found the suspect. And an investigative officer said from the police department, as he recounted the incident, the culprit was eventually seen walking up a staircase to the second floor of a public housing block. The 51-year-old man was eventually sentenced to 6 years in jail. The case is among more than 5,000 that have been solved with the help of police cameras since they were introduced in Singapore in 2012, said the police on Sunday. To date, more than 90,000 police cams have been deployed at public housing blocks, multi-story car parks, neighborhood centers, etc., and they've proven to be an invaluable source of investigative leads. The goal is to install more than 200,000 such cameras by 2030. An inspector who has been an investigation officer for over a decade said, back then in the past during our investigation, we had nothing other than victims and witnesses to rely on, so it was quite difficult for us. Right now we have general footage to pinpoint the person, to identify the person, and also confirm that he's there. And even his demeanor and actions can help us in our investigations. So if you're...
Look, you feel safer, right, in Singapore?
Well, it says in his statement, right now we have footage to pinpoint the person and to identify the person. That means they're using facial identity.
Yeah.
His colleague added that the growing scope of coverage over the year has helped. Instead of maybe 6 years ago, we only had certain locations that we were focusing on. Now it really eases our workload in a way, as we can have better coverage to see where the suspect goes after the offense. She added that with improving technology, the images are getting even clearer, and that has helped with identifying suspects. Video analytics technology, which allow officers to comb through footage more easily, is also continuously refined, but the inspectors stressed that while the cameras can help crack cases, there are just one of many investigative tools they use. It still boils down to gathering evidence, boils down to good interviewing skills with suspects and witnesses and even victims, so that we can piece together a coherent account of incidents to determine the motivations for committing a crime. And what I find, and then they talk about how they're able to find missing people using the cameras as well. And then the last paragraph's about concerns about privacy, responding to questions over issues of privacy. They said that in deploying the cameras, police have always sought to address the broader interests of public safety and security while respecting the privacy of private spaces. Hence, police cameras are deployed at locations which only cover public spaces within their field of view. He added that there are strict data protection safeguards and controls on the storage, access, and use of the footage. The footage is securely stored, and only authorized persons are allowed to access them for official purpose. Any person found accessing them for unauthorized purposes will be severely dealt with. And what I find interesting about this is a Singapore publication. This is an article that you would never read in the United States of America, which is talking about the benefits of technology in arresting people and interviewing the police on how they feel about it. In America, we have exactly the opposite. You have the tech publications writing the article from the perspective of the people who are caught and feel that it's unfair and whatnot. So it's a very different journalistic landscape of covering tech there.
Singapore is a nice, safe place for people who behave and want to be good. Welcome to Singapore.
Do you not think it's a bit ironic, Tyler? Because like justice is kind of part of the foundation stone of like this, I don't know, perception, the psyche within the American population. So like when you articulated it, it's always in the shoes of the perpetrator. I find it like scratch my head as well. Like,
it really depends on if you trust, if the government is trustworthy or not. If the government's trustworthy, then why not let them have cameras? Why not enhance their capabilities? If your government's not trustworthy, then cameras are going to be a very big problem, and they can be used, it's a tool, and in the hands of good actors, it will be used in great ways, and in the hands of bad actors, it will be used in very bad ways. So it's the technology itself isn't the issue. But what's interesting is that the American publications are covering this in a way implying that the tool is dangerous. Well, yes, potentially it is in the hands of bad actors. So are you implying that your government are bad actors? Is that what you're really worried about? Well, let's talk about that. That's the core issue.
And Tyler,
yeah.
And to your point, I've been to Singapore, and as a black man in America, Cheryl, I will agree with her to this point. It is beautiful because I think the Singaporeans are more darker skinned, the natives, but they're very fair equally across the board, at least when I was there. And so, it was intriguing to me. I mean, I'm talking just fair, no matter who you are, what you are. If you're equal, you're equal. There's no, I didn't see any bias from the human standpoint, and everything is clean. But I think these tools from the East, when they get to the West, you're right. They remove, an AI and everything. It removes this, I don't know, just like we were talking about Walgreens. These AI and all this removes these weapons out of something that wants to hold minorities, or not minorities, or just a certain class system down globally. And, it just shows the transparency. And I won't talk too much more on that, but I've been there, been to Asia. I was surprised. In Singapore, I was shocked how they control that island so much. I mean, more than Japan, even Tokyo.
Yeah.
It's just Singapore is really, it's really like a cosmopolitan. I think that's why a lot of Asians go there and wealthy Chinese go there, because it's really a beautiful place to live because you're very controlled. So, yeah.
Well, and the
I
Tyler,
other
did watch
side to
something on
that,
the.
Dave, is that, there's justice, and then there's this principle of being innocent until proven guilty. And so I think that, just depending on the population and, the history of policing, some communities are more or less trusting of the systems, as Tyler mentioned. And so I would imagine that from the U.S. perspective, this notion of being innocent until proven guilty trumps, a more kind of, aspirational notion of justice, when, many people feel as though the justice system doesn't always work to their benefit, just looking at the number of people who have been wrongfully accused and sometimes sentenced to death. So that would be my take on it.
Yeah, understand.
I don't like to chime in with some Tyler's point. I mean, I'm from Taiwan, so yeah, we are like Singapore. We have so many cameras in the street, and even here we get used to have the driving recorder. Everyone right here, right now, because if you have some car accident, that's the only thing that can help you in the first place. And but we have this event that some gangsters they will have a quarrel, and they fought into the police station, and that is the place you will have so many cameras. But because they have some relationship with the policeman there, so overnight when like reporters to ask, where is the camera recordings? And they say, oh, sorry, our equipment was broken, so we don't have that footage. So that means even you have these two, but you still have you have to the right person to use the right tool to give you the most benefit from this. So it's not about the cameras; it's about who is using this information. Maybe I'm done. Thanks.
Okay, next up, the Ken found this one from the Wall Street Journal about the Twitch streamer earnings, because all of that data was hacked recently, and now one of the findings is that the top 1% of streamers so far this year got over half of all the revenue, according to data made public in a high-profile leak. So the top 1% is making half the money, just like America in general. Almost exact. Ken, what are the odds of that?
Pretty good.
It's exactly the same. The top 1% makes half the money in the US and on Twitch. Kind of amazing. What can we draw from that? The next one, I imagine those top 1% are using data in a way that the rest are not. Just like the top 1% in America have access to information. There's a little more information access, a little more data. The power of data goes a very long way. The next one's from Evan, about that 60 Minutes, who last week did their whistleblower interview. This week, they did a deep dive on deep fakes. All about deep fakes, hyper-realistic pictures, videos, and audio recordings that are created using artificial intelligence. And the person doing the story from 60 Minutes is, stunned to learn about this, where a deep faker takes the journalist who's interviewing him and makes him say things that he never said. And then he sees himself saying something that he obviously would never say, and he's stunned. And the world's learning about your grandparents just learned about deepfakes by watching 60 Minutes yesterday. So you can expect a call from Nana and Papa probably today or tomorrow saying, "What is this deepfakes?" And then Ken found this one. This is how America works, by the way. Basically everyone's parents and grandparents watch 60 Minutes on Sunday evening, and so whenever they cover something, that's when the rest of the world figures something out.
Tyler,
Yeah.
please stop being condescending.
I'm not.
You're right, but
I'm right.
I know.
Tell me I'm not
but
right.
Please stop.
That's what happened.
You are right, but just be a little softer. I mean, come on, man.
I'm just saying.
I mean, I know you grew up in Tyler. Please, I mean, for the people. I mean, you're in Thailand because you're right. They'll go to their kids.
What's this deep fake? Susie, what's it? I just saw something on 60 Minutes. What's this deep faking? Are you deep faking?
Tyler, and I shouldn't say this, but remember a few months ago there was a dad that popped on stage, and he was the proudest dad on Clubhouse. He was like, "Yeah,
oh yes, from
my
Texas.
kids told me I." He probably had just watched 60 Minutes. He was like, "Yeah, they were talking about some crypto block something." Oh, too much information, but not enough. Yeah.
So Ken found this one.
Not LS.
From the Wall Street Journal that the next act for Apple veteran Ron Johnson is taking home delivery startup public. The man behind the Genius Bar is betting online buyers will want the extra service that Enjoy Technology has to offer, which is, kind of rapid home delivery. So, yep, smart people are getting into the rapid home delivery game. Renjith found this.
He did really well with JCPenney, right?
Not so well yet.
Yeah, Chris is being facetious.
Yeah.
The
Renjith found this one from Fortune that India is on the brink of an energy crisis as coal reserves hit critical lows. Coal reserves at 110 of India's 135 power plants have dwindled to critical levels as monsoon rains and the high cost of imports curb restockings. So India is about to run out of energy, everybody.
That's true, Tyler. We got a notification this morning that we're going to be having power cuts regularly at our place, like 2 hours every day. And they're going to schedule it and they're going to say that there's a power outage for, say, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. every day. Just this morning, we got news. So we got to plan our appliances.
What's going to happen to the refrigerator?
We don't know.
For 2 hours, your refrigerator will be fine.
Yeah, I think
Just
so.
don't open it.
Currently, power outages in northern India, so in Rajasthan. I think there have been some strategic blackouts in Rajasthan, so sort of rolling, scheduled, but still sort of power outages there.
We have power outage quite often. I mean, in Addis, so you kind of survive. I mean, you try to not to have a lot of cheese or things like that in the fridge. But
So Messi,
there were, yeah.
just a quick question: is that going to push adoption of solar panels and new tech?
For those who can afford it.
Yeah, actually,
I think so.
yeah,
At the residence, for sure.
yeah.
The
In
energy is going to
Ethiopia,
be constrained to
actually,
make them. That was what I was mentioning in the morning show.
Yeah, the price for all of these rare earth metals that are heavily used in renewable technology, they're all going up. I mean, and you're also seeing sort of strategic acquisitions by China in the space. So, I mean, the thing about the power outages is they're happening globally. So this is, as we're transitioning to renewables, we've taken our eye off the wheel. I mean, we've started to decommission coal and gas, take them out of our baseload power generating capacity, and we haven't filled them in with anything else. So we're waiting basically for renewable capacity to increase substantially. We have no way really to store that effectively, certainly outside of mountainous regions where you can use pump hydro. So we have a deficit. If the wind doesn't blow or if the sun doesn't shine, then we don't have power. I mean, China's power growth in the first half of this year was over 16% year on year. That's the growth. That's, at a time that they're transitioning, at a time they're shutting down, and the same is true of India, and we are just we're going to feel that in Europe. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about the energy market in the US, but the European market can't get access to additional carbon power sources like gas, which is principally how a lot of our non-nuclear or non-renewable power is generated in Europe, from say the Middle East, Qatar. Our only option because of hardening relationships with China is probably Australia. But China, I think it was last week, basically Xi Jinping said, don't worry about the money. If you need more money, just buy reserves, gas, coal. So in actual fact, we're beginning to produce more carbon emissions than we ever have done. I mean, they're going to peak now. Instead of reducing, they're going to peak in 2022. There's a Bloomberg NEF report this weekend. So
Tyler.
it's
But Jonathan,
tough.
Yeah, Ethiopia has actually quite a very good part of integrated with the federal government. In fact, they call it green and climate resilient economic development, and they have had that for few years already, if not over a decade, where we are diversifying actually all the renewable energy from like hydropower generation to wind, and also Ethiopia there is a lot of solar panels as well, and also in the rural areas where the biggest population that's off grid is also there's a huge initiative for solar energy distribution. So I mean, it's not going as fast or as good as it's being hoped for, but they do have that type of strategic implementation plan in the federal government. So hopefully we'll get there.
and Missy, real quickly, and to your point, Jonathan, Ethiopia does have that dam that they're looking for Africa. And there is, renewable energy ways to be on the continent of Africa, which I'm very committed to. And as Missy knows, my son's from there and so forth. But Jonathan, I think, for the China standpoint, we have been doing the carbon side and things are shifting. And these are, and China's talked about this. And I'm not just, toting Tyler's ass. He knows me because he taught in the hood. So we'll go back. But Tyler, when he gets it right, he gets it right. If he's wrong, I'll check him and he can check me. But when you talk about something and people see it later, it's sometimes, disheartening. But this was already stated where we need to move off these legacy systems. I think what's happening now in the world, and this AI and technology is growing faster. That's why I'm on this book of AI 2041. I'll text it to anyone that wants to know the name. But it talks about the future in 20 years and good of how things will work. And it's what we do in tech news around the world. We kind of predict what's coming and, Tyler interprets it. But when you talk about real AI scientists, people that are in this world doing it, like, I'm a junior person beyond Kofi Lee. But when these guys have done this and they're talking about this, Stephen and Barkey, we're already there. What we have to change collectively, all of us, is this legacy money system, colonial system, whatever it is. Like, I'm entitled to whatever. Because if you don't have the knowledge of the tech, you don't get to, a seat at the table. If you're building something and you're correcting something, you get a seat at the table. That's my personal belief. I grew up, very impoverished. So if you can do it, you get a seat at the table. And what's changing is these legacy systems are hurting the world. There's climate migration and climate change. And I think they're all converging. And thank you, Tyler. I'm sorry for being long, but that's my piece, because I think we're just going to keep repeating the same thing. And Europe and everything else is trying to copy legacy systems versus invest, find the best tech companies, make sure it's equality and equality. Just do it the right way, which is what we talk about in tech news around the world. Technology is not bad. That's all I'm saying. Technology is not bad. And money's not good. Just do it the right way. We'll all live better.
Tyler?
There's something very interesting about this energy conversation. Do you remember what I've been popping into the conversation quite a bit, probably for about 3 months now, is that energy web chain. Remember I told you about that it's a public chain, it's enterprise grade, and what it's doing is it's designed to create decentralized energy and grid. And it's been getting a lot of attention in Europe because that's where they're testing it out in about 5 countries. And ironically, Netherlands energy has gone up in certain places, but they're incentivizing people to get solar panels. So now the people that are functioning with more reasonable energy in their residential and commercial are those that are using solar panels. Like many of the buildings here that they're building new have solar panels on the roof, and the government's subsidizing for them to put solar panels so that we go towards solar and wind. And they've really been focusing on this quite a bit. And clearly, Tyler, they've known this, as Ellis was saying, because of what happened with Gazprom and unfortunately MH17, which was a flight that went down. You know, there was quite a few Dutch people on there, and the daughter's boyfriend, who worked at Gazprom as well, was Dutch. So this was seen a few years ago when that happened, and I think the Dutch really just got a little bit shocked enough to know that they needed to move on this energy thing, because the energy here is not turning into a hard situation, if that's clear. Like the Dutch are managing to pivot because they have solar and wind, but the energy
Just to give you some context, you look at BP's latest report and you look at terawatt hours and output. So all of those that are focused on fossil fuels, and I'm not advocating that we should use fossil fuels, you know, and we definitely need to transition to renewables, but we also need to look at nuclear in the mix because it is a clean source of energy and it's reliable. You look at China, Russia, India, the US, even Canada, Pakistan, Iran, their energy output generation has gone up. You look at Japan, Germany. I mean, Japan lost 208,000 terawatts of power over the last 10 years, principally because of Fukushima and the fact that they took nuclear out of their mix. But Germany's lost, 50,000 terawatts worth of power on an annual basis. So what we need to have is a sensible conversation about how we transition. So I'm all for renewables. I'm all for solar panels. Certainly, I think at the moment, because costs are going up, rare earth metals are going to become politicized. So China controls 60% of those. I think there's going to be a slowing down in that transition, but we can't escape from the immediate fact that we are experiencing energy shock. Our consumption of energy is going up, and we have no way basically to meet that difference. So we have to look at nuclear. The problem we have right now is anything we look at outside of fossil fuels, so gas or coal, is long term. You know, if you want to invest in wind farms, it's sort of 3 to 5 years. If you want to invest in nuclear, it's sort of 10 to 20 years. So we're going to experience a very, very interesting time over the next sort of 6 to 12
But
months.
okay, but
Tyler.
Jonathan, I'm sorry, I'm
No, go
sorry to
ahead,
be,
Ellis.
Jonathan, just one point. There is advances being done, and I'm going to yield to Tyler and thank you, and I yield to the girls because MA, Lakeisha, Cheryl, you women say it better than me. Jonathan, me and you can, offline blockchain or, back channel. There is science being done on this, but Tyler points out to this. Sometimes I'm talking about money isn't backing it because they're trying to get their alpha return quickly on what the world is versus what the world will be. And that's why I was talking about the book of 2041, which I can text out to anyone, and I will do that to people who back channel me. But that's 20 years from now. We will, and they map out everything. And he is that guy that wrote AI Superpowers. So we will be there. And if we don't change this now, we're done. I mean, as a humanity. So you're right. The tech is there. It has to be real tech, proven tech. Let me be very clear because I say this all the time because of how I grew up. Verify it, confirm it, and verify it again, and keep verifying it. but this is tech. And so all I'm saying is that we have this, but the money needs to follow it, right? It needs to not follow what Tyler says. Consumerism, it's the same thing. And what do we do as humanity? So if we can change this, we can, Jonathan. So that's all I'm saying. But to the girls, they say it better than me. But you back channel
let
me
her say
because
it.
I don't.
Amy's trying to jump in.
Yeah, Tyler, this is very interesting because I've been, it was a bit. LS is pretty spot on because as someone who's been studying blockchain specifically in a very practical way, similar to LS, I didn't grow up with the silver spoon in my mouth, clearly. But one of the things that it is I did grow up having to hustle and sort of sort out how to solve problems in creative ways because that's just how I was raised. The interesting part about this, what Ellis is saying about the money and where it's going, and the reality of what's happening. Let me just name a couple of the partners on the ecosystem of Energy Web Token, which has increased by tenfold since I spoke to you since I shared about this Energy Web Token. I've been talking about this a lot, Tyler. You know, this is one of my rabbit holes, right? Duke Energy, Shell, GE, GridX, Evolve, Electrobras. Who else is in here? AES, Acciona, AnyBlock Analytics, Austin Consultants, Centrica, Deutsche Erdwarme, Eneco, Evolve. Like if you look PG&E, Protocol Labs, PTT Group, Shinzen Energy, Tenaska, Vestas, Vodafone, Volkswagen, Wipro, Warepass, like literally the number of people that are playing on this stand are moving pretty Chubu Electric Power. You know, when you start seeing the names of the partners of this ecosystem, their whole essence is become the industry's leading blockchain partner for utilities, grid operators, renewable energy developers, corporate energy buyers, and others. They already see this, Tyler. The technologists are already recognizing, as LS is saying from reading AI 2041, if we don't look at least 20 years ahead, we are a bit shangad, as they say in Italy. We're a bit shangad because at the end of the day, there's too much of short-sighted thinking where we have to start looking at 20 years ahead. And as a forecaster, that was what my brain was always trained to do in the fashion industry because we look 2 years ahead. And that's the reason I'm saying we need to look 10, 20 years ahead. We can't imagine that one of our kids or our nieces or our nephews are going to want to use a source of energy that's going to tarnish the earth because they have a different mindset. Look at Greta Thunberg. She has a different way of thinking. She's 14 years old. This is something that we have to really passionately consider the future of the kids and the generations to come. It's not about sitting here in an echo chamber talking about the same stuff over and over. It's about creating possibility of new innovations and solutions, and everyone coming to the table is going to look and appear physically different. And I think that's the big challenge that I empathize and agree with LS. The people that are stepping into this space are new and they look different than the people that have been sitting at the table before. And there has to be a come to Jesus, or else we're going to see ourselves extincting ourselves.
So let me just quickly, if I could share, like the experience of Pakistan. So back in 90s, obviously Pakistan only had like 2 dams, and because of those dams, were actually taking care of pretty much like all the electricity supply. But in 90s, what happened was that, obviously rolling blackouts, this and that, it was all happening. It was all apparent. And, they started actually generating electricity with the fuel. And obviously everybody knows that, you can do it for so long. And after that, it's going to actually come on the burden. And then over the time, it actually created this circular debt into the actual, financial budget, which to date has been happening. But you know how the public actually reacted to it? It's just so funny that the way everybody reacted to it, obviously they were cursing government that they haven't taken care of it. And, their generations, like at least 2 generations, is sort of like have experienced this rolling blackouts. And in the meantime, like nuclear actually came into the mix. So it was kind of like, getting better. And then over the time, it was just getting down. But, everybody actually went out, and this new industry of UPS, universal power supply, actually kind of flourished. And that was in-house. I mean, pretty much in the country, everybody started making electrical engineers actually coming up with the best and best UPS. And I think almost about 60 to 70% of the whole population, every single house has got this UPS, which is connected with the truck batteries. So every house has got like about 2-3 truck batteries, which are kind of, charged up while there's a rolling blackout. Obviously, is going to be coming, and it takes care of about 2-3 hours, and you will have like a supply for almost 2-3 hours throughout the house, and you can actually run the refrigerator and the fans and the lights and everything. Obviously, you can't run the air conditioning, but at least it takes care of it. But this actually flourished, the whole industry by itself, this UPS industry. And then obviously local made batteries started to actually come about. And it was just one of a case studies at how the country actually tackled with it. Now they're building 2-3 dams, which is going to be completed, I think, in 2023. And they have already sort of like generating surplus of electricity. But one thing, I haven't come across any country has done that from the UPS point of view. But this is just amazing. There's such a huge population has actually come to terms with it, and they took care of it, in terms of universal power supply across the house.
Unlearned. I mean, with the nuclear in their mix that they brought on. And then I think in like the last 10, 12, 13 years, they've built they've undertaken 30 pumped hydro storage, using the Himalayas. I mean, it's something incredible, like
Jonathan,
4 gigawatts worth of storage.
Jonathan, can I ask you something? It's a complete tangent, but you really have the highest level of technical prowess I've encountered in this room about energy. Have you heard of any projects where it's atmospheric water generation at high altitude?
You've got me there. I mean, I could wax lyrical, but then I'd be bullshitting everybody. No, I haven't.
Okay, because Eli and I are launching a project where we want to do AWG at high altitude to gather that both water and the gravitational energy from it. So we want to be up at I've done the calculations. If we get to 3,000 meters or higher, it's a self-sustaining process.
Chris, and I don't know anything about this shit, let me be very clear, but check with DOD. They've done something like this. That's all I can say.
Vinay has a lot of background in atmospheric water collection as well.
Yeah, so the idea is the sun does all this hard work for you. It lifts all the water to altitude.
Right.
And all you have to do is gather it.
Yep.
And if you gather it, you can harness that electrical energy as well as the water you need for civilization. So if you were smart, you could build these kites, you could build blimps that go up over farms and go do this.
So Chris, we're getting into Nikola Tesla's work.
Right. But Chris, what you're describing is you only need to start the power of it.
You only need to start it once.
Right. And then once you start it, then the water it generates will power itself.
Exactly.
Right. That's genius. And then you get free water.
You heard it here first, everybody.
Yeah.
Check it out, atmospheriq.org.
Tyler, you need to be a part of this.
Yeah,
we will do this.
I love that.
I mean, whatever we do, whatever group there is or forum, you just need to
Chris,
be a part
I don't
of
think it needs to be 3,000 meters high, though. I think you could do it a lot less than that.
No, we've seen. I've ran. The latest one is there's a thermoelectric that only requires 700 kilojoules per liter. So with 125 watts, they're generating 14 liters a day. So it's
because you're right, because the water is such a small amount. You're right. Okay, so the next the next one is, well, let's keep it on the water tip. Helsinki Times reports that the UN agency warns of looming global water crisis, and this one came out. The World Meteorological Organization, the WMO, a specialized agency of the UN, warned on Tuesday that climate change increases the global risk of water-related hazards like floods and droughts, and the number of people affected by water scarcity is also expected to soar, as I've warned everybody here multiple times. And in its new report entitled The State of Climate Service 2021 Water, the The agency says that 3.6 billion people globally had inadequate access to water at least 1 month per year in 2018, and by 2050, that number is expected to exceed 5 billion. The situation is worsening by the fact that only 0.5% of water on Earth is usable, so half of 1%. And then let's go directly to the report rather than reading the publication of the report. Here it is. Disappearing water is a warning in a warming climate, a story of 4 visuals. And this one says, where'd it go? Right. Water scarcity will be the biggest climate-related threat to corporate assets like factories within the next few decades, according to the report. Of course, the human cost of worsening scarcity is already fully apparent. About 1 out of every 4 people in the world don't have access to safely managed drinking water. That means 25% water stress. Water stress is exactly that, not having consistent access to clean water. So they're saying it's 25%. I've been telling you it was 15%. They're now saying it's 25. They also say, and in the article reads, and I quote, and in just a few years, about 2/3 of the global population could face water shortages. 2/3 is 66%, as I told you it would be. This has been known for a decade that this is going to happen. And now it's happening.
What's most alarming to me is that places like Nepal. So Nepal, it's surrounded by the Himalayas, and it's ranked in the top 5 in terms of being most water insecure because of one of the points that you just made. So we have the nexus of climate change and drought that is being caused by that. But then you have waste management and sanitation that makes the water that would be accessible in water-rich countries like Nepal not potable or drinkable because there aren't the resources to process it. So I think that's what's even more alarming. You have the the human created acceleration of climate change, and then you have the lack of resources and infrastructure that deprives even more people.
The next article Poppy found, it's from Newsweek. It's a brand new article, and it says, water shortages are coming. Why aren't we prepared? Yeah, I've been asking that. Decentralized water treatment infrastructure is the key to boosting our water recycling and buffering ourselves against the impact of the coming water shortages. And the next one is, the economy is shrinking for women. That's why we need Build Back Better. This is also from Newsweek. So tweeting that one out. And then let me do this one here. This is from Faraz from Bloomberg. It says, it's time for Apple Watch to break free from the iPhone. Kind of a good point, that if you could get them to work with Androids, that would get a lot of more people over from Android. The next one, also from Faraz, U.S. arrests couple on spy charges to sell nuclear submarine data. The U.S. arrested a Navy Department employee and his wife for spying-related charges after they allegedly sold restricted data on nuclear-powered submarines. The next one, from The Guardian.
Oh, sounds like U.S. is going to have Australia's nuclear submarine data too.
From The Guardian, the headline reads, Frances Haugen takes on Facebook, the making of a modern U.S. hero. The former employee exposed how the tech giant puts profits before the public good. Will her testimony change anything? She's a hero, but will it have any difference at all? And then The Guardian also says that Squid Game's success on Netflix reopens debate over who should pay for the rising internet traffic. Demand for capacity grows on back of Netflix hit series. Well, the user should pay for the data to the person they're buying the data from.
This again.
This old story again. Journalists who don't understand how tech works fundamentally. Similar to the Apple Watch story, which again, Apple's not going to untether that from the Apple Watch, because the whole reason for the watch is to get you into their ecosystem to buy their phone. If they made their watch work with Android phones, that would defeat the whole fucking fundamental purpose of developing the watch in the first place, which is a Trojan horse to get you off of that Android phone onto Apple phones. So
Tyler?
yes?
Okay, I'm sorry. You know, I'm an OG. I'm just going to say something which you hate hearing. Maybe
Do it quick because we got 3
you should.
minutes and I have
I
10
will. One
headlines.
second. Okay. You should start a media company
Okay.
to challenge this game. Listen, you know them. I'm with you, Chris. A lot of people are with you to challenge the bullshit. Trump did it. I mean, come on. You know US.
I know. I appreciate it.
I'm
But we
saying,
got 3 minutes and I have to read 10 headlines.
okay.
All right.
So start
DM
it
me.
and
DM me.
start it and
DM me. Here
I
we go.
will.
The next one's from The Guardian. It says it's revealed anti-vaccine TikTok videos being viewed by children as young as 9 years old. But we're talking about Facebook, of course. That's the real concern. COVID misinformation remains on site for months, adding to concern over impact of social media on young people. The Guardian's calling it out. There it is. There it is. Somebody in media called out TikTok. And by the way, The Atlantic did a fantastic piece doing exactly that. And then Evan found this one, that new AirPod Pro update helps you hear quiet conversations. It's called Conversation Boost, so that you can hear conversations at the tables around you if you're a spy, or if you're hard of hearing, you can hear the person sitting across from you. It's a kind of a genius new update to the AirPod Pros in the new latest version of the operating system. And then Faraz sends in this one, that a company called Yalla, a dark store backed by Russia, now operating in Dubai. Dubai 15-minute delivery shopping, a Russian company doing 15-minute deliveries in Dubai, called Yalla. Indian startup funding crosses $25 billion in a little over 3/4 of 2021. So they're on track to break $30 billion in funding in 2021. That is fucking incredible. That's way past London. Way past London. So Dubai jumping to potentially number 2 globally for 2021 after Silicon Valley, and not far behind it, I bet. That's amazing. The next one, nuclear engineer sells classified data to undercover FBI agents for crypto. Ouch. A nuclear engineer sells classified data to an undercover FBI agent for crypto. The FBI had arrested a couple accused of attempting to sell sensitive information regarding nuclear submarines. It's a different take on that story. Thank you for that. And BBC has an article about the high-tech headbands that claim to reduce your stress. Devices that measure brainwaves are increasingly being used by athletes to improve their performance. And one of my dearest friends, Moha, does such a startup in Stockholm. And so I will bring him in maybe when we meet next time, although he's quite shy with media appearances and whatnot. So we might have to wait for a special occasion. But yeah, these are just starting to boom. And
and Tyler, I just want to add on the nuclear side.
No, let's not. We don't have time, LS. My apologies. The next one from the New York Times. After whistleblower goes public, Facebook tries to calm its employees. Employees are divided over Frances Haugen, a former product manager who testified, and now the New York Times with yet another, perhaps their 12th article since the Facebook files started, fanning the flames on the dumpster fire with this new headline that after the whistleblower goes public, Facebook tries to calm their employees. Poppy found this one from Forbes, that George Soros' fund reveals surprise Bitcoin bet. And Ken found this one from Forbes, that Apple's stunning plan to strike Facebook is a triumphant success, talking about the privacy changes they made in 14.5 and 14.8 have been successful in hurting Facebook. And Cheryl found that one. We can skip. A missing apostrophe in a Facebook post lands a New South Wales real estate agent in legal hot water. Court declines to dismiss defamation case against Anthony Zadarvik, who said failure to punctuate social media post was trivial, and his little not including a little apostrophe changed the meaning of the sentence, and now he's being held liable. And our friend Aaron found this one from Yahoo Finance, that Meta Visa takes on the future of digital and metaverse identity with decentralization. The new frontier of the internet and blockchain protocols is the metaverse. The metaverse is a brave new world of interconnectivity, etc. Really good article. So I just tweeted that out. We're now 1 minute over, and I have a call that I'm 1 minute late for. So I will thank you, and we will join again in 5 hours. Sorry, LS.
Thanks, Tyler.
There's always another one.
No. Hey, no problem. Just real quickly, Cheryl, I'll deal with this later.